I stood in my childhood bedroom staring at the acceptance letter from Stanford Medical School in my trembling hands. 8 years of studying, working 3 jobs, sacrificing everything had led to this moment. Then my mother's voice cut through my joy like ice. Either you give up medical school to support your brother's music career, or you move out tonight. We've already decided. Nathan needs the money more than you need to play doctor. I looked at my parents' stone faces and made my choice. The silence that followed my mother's words felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I stood there, the Stanford letter crinkling in my grip, watching my parents' expressions for any sign this might be some kind of twisted joke. But their faces remained as hard as granite, their eyes cold and determined. "You're serious," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. My father cleared his throat, adjusting his reading glasses the way he always did when delivering bad news. "Elmira, we've given this a lot of thought. Nathan has real talent. His music teacher says he could make it big with the right support. And my medical degree?" I asked, holding up the letter that represented 4 years of undergraduate studies, countless volunteer hours at the hospital, and 3 jobs that left me exhausted but determined. 8 years of work means nothing. My mother sighed dramatically as if I was being unreasonable. "You can always go to medical school later. Nathan's 20 now. If he doesn't make it in music soon, he'll miss his chance forever." I turned to look at my brother, who sat at the piano in the corner of the living room, his fingers idly playing a melody I didn't recognize. He wouldn't meet my eyes, just kept his gaze fixed on the keys, as if they held all the answers to the universe. "Nathan," I called out, hoping my younger brother would show some sign of discomfort with this situation. "You're okay with this?" He shrugged, still not looking up. "Mom and Dad know what's best, Elmira. Music is my calling. You wouldn't understand." The casual dismissal in his voice stung more than my parents' ultimatum. This was the boy I'd helped with homework every night, the kid I'd taught to tie his shoes and ride a bike. Now he sat there, content to let our parents destroy my future for his maybe. "How much?" I asked, turning back to my parents. "How much of my college fund are you planning to give him?" My mother's lips pursed, a sure sign she didn't want to answer. But my father, ever the pragmatist, decided to lay it all out. "All of it. $180,000. It's already done, actually. We withdrew it this morning." The room spun. I gripped the door frame to steady myself. "You already took it without even telling me first." "We knew you'd be difficult about it," my mother said, smoothing her skirt. "This way, it's done. Nathan leaves for Los Angeles next week. He'll need studio time and apartment equipment, promotional materials. Success doesn't come cheap." I laughed, but it came out bitter and sharp. And my success, the success I've already proven I can achieve, that comes free. "Don't be melodramatic," my father said, his tone dismissive. "You're smart. You'll figure something out. Nathan needs our support now." I looked around the room at the family photos lining the walls, at the certificates of achievement I'd earned throughout high school and college, all framed and displayed prominently. Or at least they had been. I noticed now that several were missing, leaving faint rectangular outlines on the wallpaper. "You've already started erasing me," I said, pointing to the empty spaces. My mother had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "We're redecorating, making room for Nathan's music awards." The letter in my hand felt heavier now, weighted with broken promises and shattered trust. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my pocket. "So my choice is to give up my dreams for his or leave tonight. Those are your options." My father confirmed, checking his watch, as if this family-destroying conversation was keeping him from something important. I nodded slowly, decision crystallizing in my mind. "Then I'll pack." The shock on their faces almost made me laugh again. They'd expected me to cave, to sacrifice my future on the altar of their favoritism. My mother stood up quickly, smoothing her skirt again in that nervous gesture I knew so well. "Elmira, don't be hasty. Where will you go?" "That's no longer your concern," I said, turning toward my room. "You've made it clear I'm on my own." As I walked down the hallway, I heard Nathan finally speak up. "She'll be back in a week. You'll see. She can't make it without us." I paused at my bedroom door but didn't turn around. They had no idea how wrong they were. What they didn't know, what I'd never told them, was that my great-aunt Margaret had passed away 6 months ago, leaving me a small inheritance. $20,000 sat in an account they knew nothing about. It wasn't much compared to what they'd stolen, but it was enough for a security deposit, first month's rent, and maybe a few months of groceries if I was careful. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopping at Sarah's name. My best friend since middle school, the one person who'd celebrated every small victory with me and held me through every disappointment. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit call. "Almira." Sarah's voice was thick with sleep. "It's almost midnight. What's wrong?" "Can I crash at your place tonight?" I asked, already pulling my suitcase from the closet. "I'll explain everything when I get there." "Of course," she said, immediately alert now. "Are you okay?" I looked around my childhood bedroom at the trophies and certificates I'd leave behind at the life I was about to walk away from. "I will be," I said, and for the first time all evening, I actually believed it. As I folded clothes and packed essentials, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the timing of all this. The Stanford letter had arrived this afternoon, but my parents had withdrawn my college fund this morning. How had they known? I walked to my desk and picked up the envelope the letter had come in. There, barely visible unless you were looking for it, was evidence of tampering. The envelope had been opened and resealed. My parents had known for days. They'd planned this ambush, timed their ultimatum for maximum impact. The realization should have hurt more, but instead it freed something inside me. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision driven by emotion. This was calculated, deliberate. They'd chosen Nathan over me with full knowledge of what they were destroying. I zipped my suitcase and took one last look around the room. Tomorrow they'd probably convert it into a music studio for Nathan or a shrine to his future success. But tonight it was still mine, and I was choosing to leave it behind. The sound of piano music drifted down the hall, Nathan playing some original composition that sounded like every other amateur piece I'd heard. My parents would bankrupt themselves chasing his mediocre dream while I fought tooth and nail for my proven ability. So be it. I'd make it without them, without their money, without their support. And one day, when the music stopped and reality set in, they'd understand the choice they'd made tonight. But by then it would be far too late. The wheels of my suitcase clicking against the hardwood floor announced my departure like a countdown to the end of my old life. Each step felt heavier than the last, but my resolve never wavered. I dragged my belongings to the front door where my parents had positioned themselves like sentinels apparently determined to have the last word. "This is ridiculous, Almira," my mother said, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "You're being childish." I set my suitcase down and faced them, fully memorizing their faces in this moment. Not because I'd miss them, but because I wanted to remember exactly how they looked when they chose to destroy our relationship. "Childish." I repeated, my voice steady, despite the storm raging inside me. "You stole $180,000 from my future and gave it to Nathan for a pipe dream, and I'm the childish one." My father stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "We didn't steal anything. That money was ours to allocate as we saw fit." "Money you promised was for my education," I reminded him. "Money I worked summers to contribute to thinking we were building my future together." "Plans change," he said curtly. "Family means making sacrifices." "Funny how I'm the only one being asked to sacrifice," I shot back. Nathan appeared in the hallway, leaning against the wall with studied casualness. He'd perfected that pose, I realized, the tortured artist too deep for ordinary concerns. "Almira, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Can't you just be happy for me?" I turned to my brother, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. "Happy that you're content to build your dreams on the ashes of mine? No, Nathan, I can't." He rolled his eyes, pushing off from the wall. "You always were jealous of my talent." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Your talent, Nathan. You've been taking piano lessons for 3 years and can barely play intermediate pieces. But somehow that's worth more than my acceptance to Stanford Medical School. You just don't understand art, he said, lifting his chin. Mom and Dad get it. They see my potential. They see what they want to see, I said quietly. My mother stepped between us, her face a mask of cold determination. Enough. You've made your choice, Elmira. When you fail, when you realize you can't make it on your own, don't come crying back to us. She turned to the wall where family photos had hung just hours ago. While I'd been packing, she'd been busy. Every photo that included me had been removed, leaving a patchwork of blank spaces and dust outlines. The message was crystal clear. I was already being erased from the family history. You work fast, I observed, gesturing to the bare walls. No point keeping reminders of disappointment, she said, not even trying to soften the blow. My father pulled out his wallet and extracted a $20 bill. For gas, he said, holding it out to me. Consider it your inheritance. I stared at the bill fluttering between his fingers. $20. The final insult. I reached out, took it, and then very deliberately tore it in half, letting the pieces fall to the floor between us. Keep your money, I said. All of it. I don't need anything from people who would sell out their daughter for a fantasy. Nathan made a sound of disgust. So dramatic. This is exactly why I need the support more. You're all logic and no soul, Elmira. Medicine suits you, cold and clinical. I picked up my suitcase, my car keys already in my hand. You know what, Nathan? You're right. Medicine does suit me. Because it's about healing people, not breaking them. It's about building something real, not chasing applause that will never come. Get out, my mother said, her voice sharp as winter wind. You're no longer welcome here. I walked past them to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. There were so many things I wanted to say, years of hurt and questions that would never be answered. But what was the point? They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. Goodbye, I said simply, and stepped out into the night. The door slammed behind me with devastating finality. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the cool night air, letting the reality sink in. I was 22 years old, alone, with nothing but what I could carry and a dream they'd tried to kill. My car sat in the driveway, a beat-up Honda Civic I'd bought with my own money from working at the campus bookstore. At least they couldn't take that from me. I loaded my suitcase into the trunk, noticing the curtains twitch in the living room window. They were watching, probably expecting me to break down, to bang on the door and beg for forgiveness. Instead, I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. The streets were mostly empty at this hour, just me and the occasional late-night driver navigating the familiar roads of my hometown. Every landmark I passed felt like a goodbye. The park where Nathan and I had played as children before talent and favoritism poisoned our relationship. The library where I'd spent countless hours studying, determined to make something of myself. The hospital where I'd volunteered, falling in love with medicine and the possibility of making a real difference. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from Nathan. You'll regret this. When I'm famous and you're still nobody, remember you chose this. I deleted it without responding. Let him have the last word. I had more important things to focus on, like the rest of my life. Sarah lived in a small apartment complex on the other side of town, a place that catered to young professionals and graduate students. I'd helped her move in last year, never imagining I'd be seeking refuge there myself. The building was quiet as I pulled into the visitor, parking, the weight of the evening finally starting to settle on my shoulders. I sat in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel and allowing myself 1 minute of grief. Not for the money, though that loss stung. Not even for the betrayal, though that cut deep. But for the family I'd thought I had. The parents I'd believed loved me equally, the brother I'd protected and supported all his life. That family had never really existed, I realize now. It had been a comfortable illusion shattered by their greed and favoritism. The minute passed. I wiped my eyes, grabbed my essentials, and headed for Sarah's apartment. She was waiting at the door, wrapped in a fuzzy bathrobe, her face creased with concern. "Oh, honey," she said, pulling me into a hug before I could say anything. "What happened?" I let her hold me for a moment, drawing strength from the unconditional support of true friendship. Then I pulled back and gave her a watery smile. "My parents decided my brother's music career was more important than my medical degree," I said. "So I left." Sarah's eyes widened. "They didn't. Tell me they didn't touch your college fund." Every penny, $180,000, gone to fund Nathan's move to Los Angeles and his guaranteed path to stardom. She cursed creatively and at length, using words that would have made my proper mother faint. Somehow, that made me feel better than any sympathy could have. "Come on," she said, grabbing my bag. "Let's get you inside. I'll make tea and you can tell me everything." As I followed her into the warmth and safety of her apartment, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mother. "Your car insurance and phone are still under our plan. We'll be canceling both tomorrow. Consider it motivation to come to your senses." I showed Sarah the message. She read it and shook her head. "They really don't know you at all, do they?" "No." I agreed, already mentally calculating what I'd need to do tomorrow to become completely independent. "They never did." It was 2 a.m. by the time I'd told Sarah everything from the moment I'd found the acceptance letter to the torn $20 bill on my parents' floor. She listened without interrupting, refilling my tea. When it got cold, offering tissues, when my voice broke. "What's your plan?" she asked when I'd finally run out of words. I pulled out my phone and showed her Aunt Margaret's inheritance account. "This will get me started. I'll find an apartment, something small and cheap. I'll need to get more jobs, but I can make it work." "You'll stay here as long as you need," Sarah said firmly. "No arguments. My couch is your couch." I squeezed her hand, grateful beyond words. "Just for a few days, I need to stand on my own feet." She nodded, understanding. "Your parents are fools, you know that, right? Throwing away a daughter like you for, what, Nathan's delusions of grandeur. They see what they want to see." I repeated my earlier words. And apparently what they wanted to see was a son with musical genius and a daughter who would sacrifice everything for family harmony. "Well, they're about to learn what they really had," Sarah said with quiet conviction. "And by then it'll be too late to get it back." As I settled onto her couch that night, surrounded by borrowed blankets and the kindness of real friendship, I thought about the envelope I'd discovered had been tampered with. 3 days. They'd had 3 days to prepare their ambush to plan the complete destruction of my dreams. They'd withdrawn my money before even telling me so, sure I'd cave to their demands. But they'd miscalculated. They'd raised me to be strong, independent, capable of hard work and sacrifice. They just never imagined I'd use those qualities to build a life without them. Tomorrow would be hard. I'd need to find an apartment, change my phone plan, get car insurance, pick up more shifts at work. The road ahead looked impossibly steep, and I had no safety net now, no family to catch me if I fell. But as I closed my eyes, the Stanford acceptance letter still folded in my pocket. I felt something they'd never understand: hope. Pure, defiant hope. They'd taken my money, but not my acceptance. They'd stolen my security, but not my dreams. They'd cut me off from family, but not from my future. I would become a doctor. I would save lives and make a difference. And I would do it without them, without their money, without their support. The last thought I had before sleep took me was of Nathan, probably already dreaming of sold-out concerts and Grammy Awards. He had no idea what was coming. Neither did our parents. They'd bet everything on a fantasy and discarded reality. Time would teach them the difference, and I wouldn't be there to cushion the blow when it did. 2 weeks after leaving my parents' house, I stood in the doorway of my new reality, a studio apartment in the roughest part of Indianapolis. The landlord, a gruff man named Carl, handed me the keys with a look that suggested he'd seen too many young people with big dreams fail in this very building. "Rent's due on the 1st, he grunted. "No exceptions, no parties, no pets, break anything you pay for it." I nodded, gripping the keys like a lifeline. "Understood." He shuffled away, leaving me alone with my new home. 400 square feet of water-stained ceiling, peeling linoleum, and a radiator that clanged like a ghost in chains. The single window faced a brick wall, and the Murphy bed creaked ominously when I pulled it down. But it was mine, paid for with Aunt Margaret's money, and that made it beautiful. I'd already started my new routine, one that would have killed most people, but only made me more determined. My days began at 4 in the morning at the coffee shop downtown, serving overpriced lattes to business people who never made eye contact. The moment my shift ended at noon, I rushed to the University Tutoring Center, where I helped struggling pre-med students with organic chemistry and biology until 6. Then came the hardest part, night shifts, as an orderly at St. Mary's Hospital from 7 in the evening until 3 in the morning. 23 hours a day accounted for. The remaining hour was for transit between jobs, scarfing down meals, and if I was lucky, reviewing notes for the medical college admission test I'd have to retake since my parents had also canceled my original registration. On this particular evening, 2 weeks into my new life, I sat on the floor of my apartment during my dinner break, eating instant ramen while my anatomy textbook lay open beside me. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. The image that loaded made my stomach turn. It showed a state-of-the-art recording studio, all gleaming equipment and professional setup. The caption read, "Living my dream, thanks to Mom and Dad, just laid down my first track. Producer says I'm the next John Legend." I stared at the photo, calculating the cost of what I saw. The soundboard alone was worth more than my annual rent. The guitar collection in the background represented my entire first year of medical school. And there was Nathan posing with studied nonchalance, wearing designer clothes that could have paid for my textbooks. Another text followed, "Hope your little apartment is cozy. Mom says hi." They knew where I lived. Of course they did. Nothing stayed secret in our extended family network. I deleted the texts without responding and returned to my ramen, which had gone cold and somehow tasted even worse than usual. My phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, a welcome interruption. "How's the new place?" she asked, her voice warm with concern. "It's perfect." I lied, looking at a suspicious stain on the ceiling that might have been mold or might have been something worse. "Liar," she said gently, "but I'm proud of you. Hey, have you checked your Facebook today?" "I deleted it," I said. "Too many family members posting about Nathan's amazing journey. Apparently he's the pride of the family now." "Good call. Your mom posted a long thing about supporting your children's dreams and making sacrifices for their success. The comments are all about how wonderful they are for backing Nathan's talent." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar sting of betrayal. Let me guess. No mention of the daughter they threw out for refusing to give up her dreams. Not a word. According to the narrative, you're pursuing your own path, and they respect your independence. How magnanimous of them. I glanced at my watch. "I need to get to the hospital. Thanks for checking in." "Almira," Sarah said before I could hang up. "You're going to make it. You know that, right?" "I know," I said and meant it. The walk to St. Mary's took 15 minutes through neighborhoods that made my apartment building look upscale. I kept my head down, moved quickly, and ignored the catcalls and occasional offers to buy things I definitely wasn't selling. The hospital emerged like a beacon, its emergency room lights blazing against the darkness. I changed into my scrubs in the employee locker room, transforming from exhausted student to professional healthcare worker. The night shift orderlies were a mixed bunch, nursing students like me, people working second jobs, and a few who'd been doing this for decades. We all shared the same hollow-eyed look of people pushing their bodies beyond reasonable limits. Almira called Destiny the charge nurse on our floor. "Room 302 needs transport to radiology. After that, we've got 3 discharges to process." I nodded and got to work. This was the hardest job physically, but in many ways it was my favorite. Here in the controlled chaos of the hospital, I felt closest to my dream. Every patient I transported, every room I cleaned, every small task I completed was a step closer to the white coat I'd earn someday. Around midnight, I was pushing an elderly patient back from X-ray when a familiar voice stopped me cold. "Almira, is that you?" I turned to find Dr. Patricia Chen, one of the attending physicians I'd admired from afar during my volunteer days. She stood there in her pristine white coat, looking every inch the successful doctor I aspired to become. Dr. Chen. I managed acutely aware of my orderly scrubs and the mop bucket I'd left in the hallway. She studied me with sharp intelligence, taking in the exhaustion I couldn't quite hide, the textbook sticking out of my bag, the careful way I maneuvered the wheelchair. "I heard you got into Stanford," she said. "Congratulations. That's quite an achievement." "Thank you," I said, unsure how much she knew about my current situation. "Yet here you are working nights as an orderly." She continued, her tone neutral, but her eyes missing nothing. "Either you're the most dedicated pre-med student I've ever seen, or there's a story here." The patient I was transporting had dozed off, giving us a moment of relative privacy in the hallway. I made a quick decision, to be honest. "Family circumstances changed," I said simply. "I'm funding my own way now." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "I see. What's your schedule like?" I outlined my 3 jobs, my study routine, my plans to retake the MCAT and reapply for financial aid. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing more thoughtful with each detail. "That's not sustainable," she said when I finished. "You'll burn out before you ever get to medical school." My heart sank. I'd hoped for encouragement, not another person telling me I couldn't do it. "However," she continued, and I perked up at that single word, "I admire your determination. I have a proposition for you. I need a research assistant for a project I'm starting on emergency medicine protocols. The pay isn't much, but it's better than orderly work, and the hours are more flexible. You could drop one of your other jobs and actually have time to study properly." I gripped the wheelchair handles tighter to hide my trembling hands. "Are you serious?" "I never joke about medicine," she said. "But there's a catch. I need someone who can commit fully. Perfect attendance, meticulous work, complete dedication. One mistake, one missed day without an absolutely valid excuse, and you're out. I don't have time for anything less than excellence." "I won't let you down," I said immediately. "We'll see," she said, pulling out a business card. "Come to my office tomorrow at 4. We'll discuss the details." She walked away before I could thank her properly, leaving me standing in the hallway with what felt like the first piece of good luck I'd had in weeks. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I delivered my patient, completed my tasks, and even managed to squeeze in 30 minutes of studying during my break. But my mind kept returning to Dr. Chen's offer. Research experience would look incredible on my medical school application. More importantly, it was a step up from pure manual labor, a move toward the career I wanted. When my shift ended at 3 in the morning, I practically ran back to my apartment, too excited to feel the usual bone-deep exhaustion. I set 3 alarms to make sure I wouldn't oversleep and miss the meeting with Dr. Chen. This was my chance, maybe my only chance, to climb out of the hole my parents had thrown me into. As I finally collapsed onto my creaky Murphy bed, my phone showed another message from Nathan. This time, it was a video of him performing at some upscale club, the audience politely applauding his mediocre rendition of a popular song. The camera panned to show my parents in the front row, beaming with pride. "First gig," the caption read. "Hollywood, here I come." I did the math quickly. Venue, rental, promotion, the professional videographer recording the performance, thousands more dollars spent on a dream that anyone with functioning ears could tell was doomed. But my parents saw only what they wanted to see, their talented son on the verge of greatness. I deleted the video and set my phone aside. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Dr. Chen. Tomorrow, I'd take another step toward proving that the child they'd discarded was the one worth betting on. But tonight, I allowed myself 5 minutes to cry, not from sadness, but from sheer exhaustion and the weight of fighting so hard for something that should have been supported, not sabotaged. The radiator clanged its midnight symphony, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed through the city streets. This wasn't the life I'd planned, sleeping in a studio apartment that smelled of old paint and broken dreams. But it was my life, built on my choices and my effort. And unlike Nathan's fantasy career, it was real. The last thing I saw before sleep, claim me, was my Stanford acceptance letter, now framed with a cheap frame from the dollar store and hanging on the wall opposite my bed. It was the first thing I'd see, When I woke up, a reminder of where I was going and why every sacrifice was worth it. My parents had given Nathan $180,000 to chase a dream. All I had was determination, a research opportunity, and the absolute certainty that I would succeed. It would have to be enough. I would make it enough. Because failure wasn't an option when you'd already lost everything and had nothing left to lose. 6 months into my new life, the inevitable happened. My body, pushed beyond its limits for too long, finally rebelled. It started as a dizzy spell during my morning shift at the coffee shop. I was reaching for the espresso machine when the world tilted sideways, sending me stumbling into the counter. My coworker Marcus grabbed my arm, steadying me. "You okay?" he asked, his voice sounding distant and underwater. I nodded, blinking away the spots dancing in my vision. Just tired. But it was more than tired. It was 6 months of 4 hours of sleep a night, 6 months of surviving on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, 6 months of pushing through exhaustion that went bone deep. I finished my shift through sheer willpower, then barely made it to the tutoring center. By the time I arrived at the hospital for my research duties with Dr. Chen, I was running on empty. The symptoms were textbook. I'd studied them enough to know. Fatigue, dizziness. Difficulty concentrating, hand tremors. My body was shutting down system by system. I made it through the first hour of data entry, but when I stood to retrieve files from the cabinet, my legs gave out completely. The last thing I remembered was the sound of papers scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm. The irony wasn't lost on me, the would-be doctor becoming the patient. Dr. Chen stood at the foot of my bed, her expression unreadable. "Severe exhaustion and dehydration," she said without preamble. "Your blood work shows anemia, vitamin deficiencies, and stress markers that would concern me in someone twice your age." I tried to sit up already, calculating how many hours of work I was missing. "You need to listen," she interrupted, her voice sharp. "I told you perfect attendance was required. This counts as a missed day." My heart plummeted. The research position was the only thing keeping me afloat financially, the only bright spot on my medical school application. "Dr. Chen, please. I can explain." "No need," she said, and for a moment I thought my world was ending all over again. Then she continued. "I know exactly what's happening. 3 jobs, minimal food, no rest. You're killing yourself slowly, and that helps no one." I waited, afraid to hope. "I'm going to give you one chance," she said. "One. You drop the coffee shop job immediately. You reduce your tutoring hours. You eat 3 meals a day and sleep at least 6 hours a night. Non-negotiable." "But the money?" "The research grant just got approved. I can increase your hours and pay rate. It won't fully replace both jobs, but it'll be enough if you're careful. The question is whether you're smart enough to take the help being offered." Tears burned my eyes. After 6 months of having doors slammed in my face, someone was finally opening one. "I'm smart enough," I whispered. "Prove it," she said then, her expression softened marginally. "Almira, you have the potential to be an excellent physician, but excellence requires sustainability. You can't save lives if you're destroying your own." She left me with those words and a strict treatment plan, IV fluids today, then a week of reduced activity. I wanted to protest the lost wages, but I knew she was right. I'd been playing Russian roulette with my health, and eventually everyone loses that game. As I lay in the hospital bed, my phone buzzed with messages I'd been ignoring all day. Most were from Sarah, worried when I hadn't responded to her texts. But 3 were from Nathan, and against my better judgment, I opened them. The first was a photo of him with someone labeled as a music industry executive at an expensive restaurant. The second showed a new laptop, top-of-the-line equipment for music production. The third made my blood run cold. "Hey sis, know you're probably busy with your little jobs, but wondering if you could help out, having some cash flow issues. Parents are tapped out after the tour investment. Just need $5,000 to tide me over. Family helps family, right?" I stared at the message in disbelief. 6 months after our parents destroyed my future to fund his, after cutting me off completely, he had the audacity to ask me for money. Money he assumed I had, despite knowing exactly why I didn't. Another message followed, "Don't be selfish, Elmira. This is for my career. You wouldn't understand what it's like to pursue art." Then another, "Mom says you're being stubborn. Dad thinks you should help. They've given me everything they can." I typed back 2 words, "Absolutely not." His response was immediate. "Wow. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. You're heartless." I almost threw my phone across the room. Everything he'd done for me, what alternate reality was he living in? But before I could respond, he'd blocked my number, apparently deciding that if I wouldn't fund his lifestyle, I wasn't worth talking to. Good. One less source of stress in my life. A nurse came in to check my IV, a kind woman named Teresa, who reminded me of what my mother could have been in a different life. She adjusted my blankets and checked my vitals with practiced efficiency. "You have a visitor," she said. "Should I send them in?" I assumed it was Sarah, but the person who walked through the door made my blood pressure spike in an entirely different way. Marcus from the coffee shop stood there awkwardly holding a container of what smelled like actual food. "Hey," he said, shuffling his feet. "Heard you were here. Thought you might be tired of hospital food." I was too surprised to respond immediately. Marcus and I had worked together for months, but we'd barely exchanged more than scheduling information and coffee orders. "That's really kind of you," I managed. He set the container on my bedside table. "It's just soup, my mom's recipe. She says it cures everything from broken hearts to broken bones." "What about broken bank accounts?" I asked, attempting humor. He smiled, and I noticed for the first time that he had kind eyes. That might require a miracle, but hey, soup's a start. We talked for a few minutes about work, about the customers we both found amusing, about nothing important. It was the most normal conversation I'd had in months, free from the weight of family drama or survival stress. After he left, I opened the container to find homemade chicken soup still warm and smelling like comfort itself. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite, and thought about kindness from unexpected places. The rest of my hospital stay passed quietly. Sarah visited, bringing textbooks so I could study from bed. She also brought news I didn't want to hear. "Your parents are telling everyone you're too proud to accept their help," she said reluctantly, "that they offered to support you, but you insisted on doing everything alone." "Of course they are," I said, no longer surprised by their revisionist history. "And Nathan," she paused clearly, debating whether to continue. "What about Nathan?" "He's been posting about unsupportive family members who don't believe in following your dreams. Lots of vague references to jealousy and small-mindedness. Your extended family is eating it up." I closed my eyes, exhausted by drama I hadn't created and couldn't control. "Let them believe what they want. I know the truth." "The truth doesn't pay bills," Sarah said gently. "No," I agreed, "but it lets me sleep at night when I have time to sleep." She squeezed my hand. "This won't last forever, Elmira. Someday they'll see what they threw away." "Maybe," I said, "but I won't be waiting around for that day." Later that evening, alone with my thoughts and the steady beep of hospital monitors, I allowed myself to really examine the path I'd chosen. It was harder than I'd imagined, lonelier than I'd expected. My body was breaking down, my family had disowned me, and I was one missed paycheck away from homelessness. But I was still here, still fighting, still enrolled at Stanford even if I'd had to defer for a year to save money, still moving forward even if the steps were smaller and more painful than planned. My phone buzzed with one final message of the day. This time it was from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it to find a screenshot from a mutual friend of the family. It showed a social media post from my parents featuring a photo of Nathan performing at some venue. The caption read, "So proud of our son for following his dreams. It takes courage to pursue your passion." The comments were full of praise for their supportive parenting and Nathan's talent. Not a single person questioned where the money for this dream pursuit had come from or what had been sacrificed to make it possible. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Tomorrow I'd be discharged. Tomorrow I'd return to my tiny apartment and my reduced work schedule and my careful budget that left no room for error. Tomorrow I'd continue climbing the mountain my parents had made infinitely steeper. But tonight I lay in a hospital bed with IV fluids restoring what exhaustion had stolen, with Dr. Chen's mentorship salvaged by her unexpected compassion, with Marcus's soup warming my stomach and Sarah's friendship warming my heart. I'd cracked, but I hadn't broken. And sometimes that's all the victory you need, not the absence of falling, but the presence of getting back up. Outside my window, the lights of Indianapolis twinkled like earthbound stars. Somewhere in Los Angeles, Nathan was probably spending more of my college fund on his delusions of grandeur. Somewhere in our hometown, my parents were crafting more lies about their supportive nature. But here in this hospital bed, I was exactly where I needed to be. Still in the fight, still moving forward, still becoming the doctor I'd promised myself I'd be. The first crack had appeared, but the foundation held, and that, I decided, was enough for today. 1 year after my parents' ultimatum, I sat in the lecture hall at Stanford Medical School, finally where I belonged. The journey to this moment had been brutal, but Dr. Chen's mentorship and my reduced work schedule had made the impossible possible. I'd retaken the MCAT scoring in the 98th percentile, and my research with Dr. Chen had resulted in 2 published papers on emergency medicine protocols. The acceptance letter had arrived 3 months ago, along with something even more precious, a full scholarship based on academic merit and financial need. The committee had been impressed by my story of perseverance, though I'd kept the family details vague. No need to air dirty laundry when clean facts spoke for themselves. Now sitting in orientation week surrounded by future doctors from across the country, I felt the sweet vindication of proving everyone wrong. My notebook lay open, ready to capture every word of wisdom, every piece of knowledge that would build my future. During the lunch break, I sat with a group of fellow first years sharing the nervous excitement that came with starting this journey. A woman named Jennifer from Texas was telling us about her family's reaction to her acceptance. "My mom cried for an hour." She laughed. "She's already planning where to sit at graduation." Others chimed in with similar stories: proud parents, supportive siblings, family members who'd believed in them through every step. I smiled and nodded, offering nothing from my own experience. Some wounds weren't meant for casual conversation. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender made my breath catch. Dr. James Morrison, the renowned oncologist whose work I'd studied obsessively. I opened it with trembling fingers. Ms. Elmira. It read, "Dr. Chen has shared your research and spoken highly of your potential. I'm conducting groundbreaking trials on pediatric cancer treatments and need a research assistant with your particular combination of dedication and analytical skills. The position would involve 15 hours per week working directly with my team. If interested, please contact my office immediately." I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Dr. Morrison was a legend in oncology, someone whose textbooks I'd memorized, whose papers I'd dissected. Working with him as a first-year medical student was like being invited to train with Olympic athletes before learning to swim. "Good news?" asked Robert, a classmate who'd noticed my stunned expression. The best I managed, already composing my response in my head. That evening in my small but clean apartment near campus, a significant upgrade from the studio in Indianapolis, I sat down to share my joy with the one person who'd stood by me. Sarah answered on the first ring. "Tell me everything," she demanded, and I could hear her grinning through the phone. I told her about orientation, about my classmates, about Dr. Morrison's offer. She squealed with excitement at each development, reminding me why real friendship mattered more than blood relations. "Have you told your parents?" she asked, eventually, her tone careful. "No," I said simply. "Why would I?" "Elmira, it's been a year. Maybe they've realized." "They made their choice, Sarah. I've made mine." She sighed but didn't push. Instead, she updated me on her own life, her promotion at work, the guy she'd started dating. Normal, happy things that felt like fresh air after the intensity of my day. After we hung up, I opened my laptop to write the formal acceptance to Dr. Morrison. But first, I checked my email, a habit I couldn't quite break. There, among the school announcements and spam, was a message from my mother. No subject line, just my name. Against every instinct screaming at me to delete it, I opened the email. Elmira. It began. I hope this reaches you. Your father and I want you to know that Nathan's career is progressing wonderfully. He's recorded several songs and is building quite a following. We thought you should know in case you see his success in the news. We're having a celebration next month for his first album release. Despite everything, you're still family. Consider this your invitation. I stared at the screen, anger and disbelief warring in my chest. A year of silence, and this was how they broke it. Not with an apology, not with questions about my life, but with bragging about Nathan's supposed success and an invitation that felt more like rubbing salt in wounds. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, I settled on silence. They didn't deserve my words, my anger, or my attention. But curiosity got the better of me, and I searched for Nathan's music online. What I found was enlightening. Yes, he'd recorded songs, vanity projects funded by our parents with view counts in the low hundreds. His following consisted mainly of family friends and what looked like purchased followers. The album release they were celebrating self-published, available only through his personal website. But the real shock came from a music blog I stumbled across written by someone who'd attended one of Nathan's performances. The review was brutal in its honesty. Nathan presents as yet another privileged young man convinced that money can buy talent. His voice is pleasant enough but unremarkable, his songwriting derivative, and his stage presence notably lacking. One wonders what level of family investment maintains this illusion of a music career. I closed the laptop feeling neither satisfaction nor sorrow, just emptiness where family should have been. The next week flew by in a blur of lectures labs and late-night study sessions. Dr. Morrison's research proved even more exciting than I'd imagined. We were working on targeted therapies for childhood leukemia treatments that could save lives with fewer side effects than traditional chemotherapy. Every day in his lab felt like touching the future of medicine. One afternoon, while analyzing data from our latest trial, Dr. Morrison paused beside my workstation. "Excellent work on the statistical analysis, Elmira," he said. "Have you considered focusing on oncology for your specialty?" "I've been thinking about it," I admitted. "Pediatric oncology specifically." He nodded approvingly. "You have the right temperament for it. Compassionate but not sentimental. Driven but not reckless. Keep this up and I'll ensure you get the best residency opportunities when the time comes." I floated through the rest of the day on those words. This was what real support looked like, earned through merit, sustained through effort, meaningful in its impact. That weekend, I treated myself to a real meal at a restaurant near campus, celebrating my first month of medical school and the research position. As I ate pasta that wasn't from a box and salad that hadn't wilted in my fridge, I people-watched through the window. A family walked by parents and two college-age kids laughing at something on one of their phones. The casual affection between them, the easy way they touched and teased, sent an unexpected pang through my chest. Not jealousy exactly, but recognition of an absence, like a phantom limb, aching where something should have been. My phone lit up with a social media notification I'd forgotten to disable. Nathan had posted again this time, a video of him in what looked like an expensive recording studio, talking earnestly to the camera about his artistic journey and the sacrifices required for authentic music. The comments were telling. Fewer family friends this time, more skeptical strangers. One particularly astute observer wrote, "Sacrifice usually means giving something up yourself, not having others give things up for you." I wondered if my parents saw these comments, if doubt ever crept into their narrative of Nathan's inevitable success. Probably not. They'd invested too much financially and emotionally to acknowledge reality now. Back in my apartment that night, I sat at my desk surrounded by medical textbooks and research notes. My acceptance letter from Stanford hung on the wall, now joined by a photo from orientation and a printout of my first published paper with Dr. Chen. I pulled out a notebook and began writing a letter I'd never send. Dear Mom and Dad, today I helped analyze data that might save children's lives. Today, a world-renowned oncologist told me I have what it takes to succeed in one of medicine's most challenging fields. Today, I ate a real meal in a real restaurant paid for with money I earned through my own efforts. You chose Nathan's dreams over mine. You chose his potential over my proven ability. You chose to believe that talent in music mattered more than talent in medicine. I no longer hate you for it. I no longer even miss you. But I want you to know that every life I save, every family I help, every advancement I contribute to it will happen, despite you, not because of you. Your daughter, the doctor you never believed in, Elmira. I read it once, then fed it to the shredder beside my desk. Some things were better left unsaid, some bridges better left burned. The silence between us had become its own form of communication, speaking volumes about choices made and consequences accepted. My phone rang, displaying Dr. Morrison's number, unusual for a Saturday night. "Elmira," he said when I answered, his voice excited. "I apologize for calling so late, but I've just received approval for an expanded trial. I need someone to co-author the paper with me. Interested?" "Yes," I said immediately. "Absolutely yes." "Excellent. We'll discuss details Monday. Oh, and Elmira, Dr. Chen was right about you. You're going places." After he hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, letting the magnitude of the moment sink in. A first-year medical student being offered co-authorship with Dr. James Morrison was like a rookie being asked to play in the World Series. I thought about my mother's email, the invitation to Nathan's album release party. They were celebrating his purchased views and vanity recordings while I was contributing to research that could revolutionize pediatric cancer treatment. The irony was sharp enough to cut. But I felt no need to share this victory with them. They'd chosen their path believing Nathan's future was worth more than mine. Now in the silence they'd created, I was building something they couldn't imagine and wouldn't understand. Success, I was learning, was sweetest when you had no one to thank but yourself and the few who'd believed when no one else would. Dr. Chen, who'd seen potential in an exhausted orderly. Sarah, who'd offered her couch and her faith. Dr. Morrison, who judged me on merit alone. These were my people now. This was my family, built on respect, sustained by effort, bonded by shared purpose rather than shared blood. The silence from my parents no longer hurt. It had become the space in which I grew unencumbered by their expectations or limitations. In their absence, I'd found my presence. In their denial of my dreams, I'd discovered my strength. And that was worth more than any inheritance they could have given me. Grandmother Rose's 80th birthday arrived like a summons I couldn't ignore. 3 years into medical school, I'd successfully avoided every family gathering, holiday, and reunion. But Grandmother Rose was different. She'd sent handwritten letters every few months, never mentioning the family rift, just sharing recipes and asking about my studies. She deserved my presence, even if it meant facing the people who'd thrown me away. I stood before my closet the morning of the party, debating what to wear. Part of me wanted to show up in scrubs, making my success unmistakable. But that felt petty. Instead, I chose a simple navy dress and, after a moment's consideration, my white coat. Not to show off, but as armor. A reminder of who I'd become without them. The drive to Grandmother's house in Fort Wayne took 2 hours. 2 hours to prepare for whatever awaited me. I'd heard nothing from my parents since declining their invitation to Nathan's album release 2 years ago. The family grapevine, however, had been active. Cousin Emma had let slip that Nathan was still in Los Angeles, still pursuing music, still being funded by parents who'd mortgaged their future for his. I pulled into the familiar driveway at precisely 2 o'clock, noting the collection of cars already there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole Mitchell clan gathered to celebrate the matriarch who'd held us together through good times and bad. I wondered what story my parents had told to explain my absence all these years. Taking a deep breath, I walked through the front door into a wall of sound and memories. The house smelled exactly as I remembered, lavender and lemon polish, with something delicious baking in the kitchen. Conversation stopped mid-sentence as family members noticed me. Elmira. Aunt Patricia spoke first, her voice pitched high with surprise. "Is that really you?" "Hello, Aunt Patricia," I said, managing a smile. "It's good to see you." The white coat had its intended effect. Eyes widened, whispers started. "Is she really a doctor now?" I heard someone murmur. Before I could be mobbed with questions, Grandmother Rose appeared in the doorway looking exactly as I remembered, despite the years. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her blue eyes sharp as ever. "There's my girl," she said, simply opening her arms. I went to her feeling like a child again in her embrace. She smelled like vanilla and safety, like the grandmother who'd taught me to bake cookies and believe in myself. "Happy birthday, Grandma," I whispered. "The best gift just walked through my door," she whispered back then louder. "Come, everyone's in the living room." The crowd parted as I followed her, their expressions ranging from curiosity to confusion to outright shock. And there, holding court near the piano, were my parents. They looked older. Dad's hair had gone completely gray, and Mom had developed deep lines around her mouth, the kind that came from frowning. They stared at me as if seeing a ghost, their carefully constructed narrative crumbling in the face of reality. "Almira." My mother said, her voice strained. "We didn't think you'd come." "I wouldn't miss Grandma's birthday," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. An awkward silence stretched until Nathan's voice filled it. He was at the piano, naturally running through scales, as if warming up for a performance. He looked different, too thinner, with the slight puffiness around his eyes that suggested too many late nights and possibly too much alcohol. "Well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter," he said, not looking up from the keys, "come to grace us commoners with your presence." "Nathan," Grandmother Rose said sharply, "that's enough." He shrugged, launching into what I assumed was one of his original compositions. The melody was predictable, the lyrics uninspired when he began to sing, but the family applauded politely when he finished the same way they'd applauded his childhood magic tricks and teenage garage band performances. "Beautiful Nathan," my mother gushed. "Everyone Nathan's been doing so well in Los Angeles. He's had meetings with several major labels." I caught Aunt Patricia's eye roll and bit back a smile. Apparently not everyone was buying the success story. The afternoon progressed with the usual birthday festivities. Cake presents stories about Grandmother Rose that grew more embellished with each telling. I stayed on the periphery, speaking when spoken to, deflecting questions about my life with vague pleasantries. But my relatives weren't stupid. They saw the white coat, heard the careful way others addressed me as doctor, noticed the confidence that came from achieving something real. The contrast with Nathan, who performed 3 more songs to increasingly distracted audiences, was impossible to miss. "So, Almira," Uncle Robert ventured during a lull, "where are you practicing?" "I'm still in medical school," I clarified. "My final year, but I'm doing research at Stanford that's been going well." "Stanford." He whistled low. "Impressive. Your parents must be proud." The silence that followed his innocent comment was deafening. My parents suddenly found the carpet fascinating while Nathan hit a discordant note on the piano. "We're proud of both our children," my father said stiffly. "They're each following their own paths." "Yes," my mother added quickly. "Almira always insisted on doing things her way. We respected her independence." I felt my jaw clench but said nothing. This wasn't the place for truth-telling, not at Grandmother's party. "Independence." Aunt Patricia repeated, her tone skeptical. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Before my parents could respond, Grandmother Rose stood commanding attention despite her diminutive stature. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice carrying the authority of 8 decades. "As you all know, I've been updating my will." Uncomfortable shifting around the room, nobody liked to talk about mortality at birthday parties, but Grandmother Rose had never been one for social conventions. "I've decided to leave the house to Almira," she continued, looking directly at me. The room exploded. My parents jumped to their feet, faces flushed with indignation. Nathan's hands crashed onto the piano keys in a jarring chord. Various relatives gasped or muttered, creating a chaos of sound. "Mother." My father said, his voice dangerously low. We discussed this. The house was supposed to go to you, yes, Grandmother Rose interrupted calmly. But things change. People show their true character through their choices. And I choose to leave my home to someone who understands the value of hard work and sacrifice. This is because of her sob story, isn't it? My mother spat, pointing at me. Whatever lies she's told you, lies. Grandmother Rose's voice could have cut glass. Like the lie that you supported both your children equally. Like the lie that Elmira chose to leave home rather than being forced out. Like the lie that Nathan's music career is anything more than an expensive fantasy. The room went silent again, but this time it was the silence before a storm. You don't understand, my father tried again. Nathan has potential. Nathan has been bleeding you dry for 3 years, Grandmother Rose said bluntly, while Elmira has been saving lives and advancing medical science. I read the newsletters, you know. Stanford's medical program features her regularly. Dr. Morrison mentions her in his published papers. That's not potential, that's achievement. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and escape this confrontation I'd never asked for. But part of me, the part that had survived on ramen and determination, stood a little straighter. Nathan finally turned from the piano, his face twisted with anger. So, what she gets rewarded for abandoning family, for being selfish. Selfish. I spoke before I could stop myself. Was it selfish when Mom and Dad took my entire college fund and gave it to you? Was it selfish when I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school while you played at being a musician on my money? You could have supported me, he shot back. That's what family does. No, I said quietly. Family supports each other, not one at the expense of another. You always were jealous, he sneered. Couldn't stand that I had talent while you just had boring grades. Nathan, Grandmother Rose said, steel in her voice. You've mistaken privilege for talent and enablement for love. Your sister earned everything she has. What have you earned? He stood abruptly, knocking over the piano bench. I don't have to listen to this. When my music takes off... When? Aunt Patricia interrupted. It's been 3 years, Nathan. When exactly is this success arriving? You'll see, he said, but it sounded hollow even to him. You'll all see. And don't come crying to me for free concert tickets. He stormed out, my parents hurrying after him, my mother shooting me a look of pure venom as she passed. The door slammed behind them, leaving the rest of us in awkward silence. Well, Grandmother Rose said cheerfully, now that that's settled, who wants more cake? D. The tension broke, replaced by nervous laughter and gradual return to celebration. But throughout the rest of the party, relatives approached me one by one. Some offered apologies for believing the stories my parents had spread. Others shared their own observations about Nathan's lack of progress and my parents' increasing desperation to justify their choice. As the sun set and guests began leaving, I found myself alone with Grandmother Rose on her porch swing. I don't want to be the reason for family drama, I said quietly. She patted my hand. Oh, my dear girl, you're not the reason. You're just the mirror that shows them what they refuse to see. The house should go to someone who'll fill it with love and purpose, not bitterness and regret. They'll contest it, I warned. Let them try, she said with a smile that reminded me where I got my stubbornness. I've been handling difficult people longer than they've been alive. She pulled an envelope from her pocket and handed it to me. Inside were newspaper clippings, medical journal excerpts, printouts from Stanford's website, all featuring my work, my achievements, my journey. I've been following your career, she said simply. Every article, every mention. I'm so proud of you, Elmira, not just for becoming a doctor, but for becoming yourself despite everything. I hugged her tightly, this tiny woman who'd seen through the lies and chosen truth. As I drove away that night, I glimpsed my parents' car at a gas station. They sat inside, apparently arguing, while Nathan stood apart smoking and staring at his phone. 3 years ago, they'd bet everything on him. Now they were discovering what everyone else could see, that talent without discipline is just noise, that dreams without dedication are just fantasy, that choosing favorites means losing everything. The house Grandmother Rose left me wasn't just property. It was validation proof that someone in my family had seen my worth when my parents couldn't. It was a future foundation, a place to build the life and career I'd fought for. But most of all, it was justice. Not the kind that comes from revenge or spite, but the kind that comes from truth finally being acknowledged. I'd stood in that room wearing my white coat, surrounded by evidence of who I'd become, and for the first time since leaving home, I felt the balance shift. They'd chosen Nathan, but Grandmother Rose and life itself had chosen me. Year 3 of medical school was proving to be the most demanding yet. My pediatric oncology rotation had me working 18-hour days, but I thrived on the intensity. Every child we helped, every treatment plan we optimized felt like a step toward the future I'd envisioned. It was 3 a.m, and I was in the hospital library surrounded by research papers on innovative immunotherapy protocols when my phone shattered the silence. Nathan's name on the screen made my stomach drop. We hadn't spoken since Grandmother's party 6 months ago. I let it ring, but he called again immediately, then again. On the 4th call, I answered. "What do you want, Nathan?" "Elmira." His voice was slurred, panicked. I need help. I'm in jail." I closed my eyes, exhaustion making the fluorescent lights pulse behind my eyelids. "What did you do?" "DUI," he said, and I could hear him trying to steady his voice. "But it's not my fault. The cop had it out for me. Look, I just need bail money. $5,000. I'll pay you back, I swear." "You'll pay me back," I laughed bitterly. "With what money, Nathan? The millions you've made from your music career." "Don't be like that," he whined. "This is serious. If I don't get out, I'll miss a really important meeting tomorrow. This producer, he's interested in my work. This could be my break." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. "Nathan, it's 3 a.m. You're drunk. You're in jail. And you're calling the sister you haven't spoken to in months asking for money. Do you see anything wrong with this picture?" "Family helps family," he said, echoing our parents' favorite manipulation. "Where are Mom and Dad? Why aren't you calling them?" A long pause. They're broke. Okay. The house is in foreclosure. They can't help." I straightened in my chair. Foreclosure. They'd taken out a second mortgage to fund Nathan's career, but I hadn't realized things had gotten that bad. "How much money have they given you, Nathan, total, over the past 3 years?" "I don't know," he said defensively. "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point. They gave you my entire college fund. They mortgaged their house. And what do they have to show for it?" "Stop lecturing me," he shouted, then lowered his voice as someone apparently warned him to keep it down. "Look, are you going to help or not?" "I'll come see you," I said, making a decision. "But I'm not paying your bail." "What's the point of visiting if you won't help?" he demanded. "We'll see," I said, and hung up. The drive to the county jail took 40 minutes through empty streets. I used the time to think, to process what I was about to do. Nathan needed help, but not the kind he was asking for, and I was possibly the only person in a position to offer it. The jail was a gray, depressing building that smelled of disinfectant and despair. I signed in as a visitor and waited in a room that had seen too many broken promises and last chances. When they brought Nathan in, I barely recognized him. Gone was the cocky young man who'd played piano at family gatherings. This Nathan was thin to the point of gauntness, with hollow eyes and shaking hands. The confident artist persona had crumbled, leaving behind someone who looked lost and frightened. "You came," he said, sounding surprised. I said I would. He leaned forward eagerly. "So you'll help the bail bondsman," said. "Nathan, when's the last time you ate a real meal?" He blinked at the unexpected question. "What I don't know. Yesterday, maybe." "When's the last time you were sober for more than a day?" His face flushed. "That's none of your business." "You made it my business when you called me at 3 a.m, I said calmly. "Nathan, you're an addict." "I'm not." You're drunk at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. You got arrested for DUI. You look like you haven't taken care of yourself in months. What would you call it?" He slumped in his chair. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The music industry is brutal. Everyone parties. It's part of the culture." "What music industry?" I asked, not unkindly. "Nathan, be honest with me. When's the last time you had a real gig, not an open mic night, not a vanity booking mom and dad paid for, a real paying performance?" His silence was answer enough. "I'll make you a deal," I said. "I'll pay for rehab. Real rehab, not a weekend detox. 30 days minimum. You complete the program, and I'll help you figure out what comes next." "Rehab." He laughed bitterly. "I don't need rehab. I need bail money and a chance to meet with this producer." "There is no producer, is there?" His face crumpled. "There could be, if I could just get out, make some calls." "Nathan, you're killing yourself, and you're killing our parents in the process. They've given you everything, and you've burned through it all. What happens when there's nothing left? When they're homeless because of the mortgage they took out for your dreams?" "That's not my fault," he exploded. "They offered. They believed in me." "They enabled you," I corrected. "And now they're paying the price." "At least they cared," he shot back. "Unlike you, you just abandoned us all for your precious career." I leaned back, studying this stranger who used to be my brother. I was 22 years old when they told me to give up medical school or get out. 22 with 8 years of work toward my dreams. They took every penny saved from my education and handed it to you, and you sat there at your piano and let them do it. "Because I have talent," he insisted, but it sounded hollow now. "You had potential," I said. "But potential without discipline, without work, without sacrifice, it's nothing. You've spent 3 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars playing at being a musician. What do you have to show for it?" Tears were running down his face now, and for a moment I saw the little brother I used to know. The kid who'd follow me around asking for help with homework, wanting to be included in everything I did. "I don't know how it got this bad," he whispered. "I really thought I'd make it. Everyone said I was special." "You are special," I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "But being special doesn't mean you don't have to work. It doesn't mean you get to destroy yourself and everyone around you chasing a dream that you're not willing to fight for." "So what am I supposed to do?" he asked, sounding truly lost. "Music is all I have." "No," I said firmly. "Music is all you've been allowed to believe you have. You're smart, Nathan. You could go back to school, learn a trade, build a real life. But first you need to get clean." He pulled his hand away. "I can't go to rehab. If people find out—" "What people?" I asked gently. "Nathan, who's left mom and dad, are about to lose their house. Our extended family sees through the facade. You have no real friends, just party acquaintances who'll disappear the moment you can't buy the next round. What exactly are you protecting?" The guard signaled that our time was almost up. I stood pulling out my checkbook. "Here's what I'm offering," I said. "I'll pay for rehab. I'll make sure you get there safely. But you have to want it. You have to admit you need help, and you have to tell mom and dad the truth about where their money went. All of it." "They know where it went," he protested. "Do they know about the drugs, the gambling debts, the money you borrowed from dealers that you can't pay back?" His face went white. "How did you—" "I'm not stupid, Nathan, and neither are the police. This isn't your first arrest, is it?" He shook his head slowly. "They've been covering for you, haven't they? Bailing you out, paying off your debts, hiding your arrests from the family. How many times?" "4, he whispered, "maybe 5. I felt sick. While I'd been fighting for every small victory, my parents had been pouring money into an endless pit of addiction and delusion. No wonder they were facing foreclosure. "This is your last chance," I said. "Take the rehab or figure it out yourself. But I won't enable you the way they have. I won't sacrifice my future for your refusal to face reality." I wrote out the check and slid it across the table. "This is for Sunrise Recovery Center. They're expecting you if you make bail. It's already paid for 30 days of treatment. All you have to do is show up." He He stared at the check like it might bite him. "And if I don't, then you're on your own. Really on your own this time. No more family money, no more bailouts, no more enabling disguised as love. You'd really cut me off your own brother." "I'll always be your sister," I said. "But I won't be your victim. There's a difference." The guard was approaching now. Time was up. "Nathan, 3 years ago, you sat at that piano while our parents destroyed my future for yours. Now look where we are. I'm about to graduate from medical school and you're in jail. Maybe it's time to admit their investment strategy was flawed." "I hate you," he said, but there was no heat in it. Just exhaustion and maybe finally a glimpse of reality. "No," I said sadly. "You hate yourself, but rehab can help with that too." As the guard led him away, Nathan turned back one last time. "Elmira, I'm scared." "I know," I said. "Being scared means you're finally seeing clearly. That's the first step." I left the jail as dawn was breaking over Indianapolis, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. My phone had several missed calls from unknown numbers, probably my parents alerted to Nathan's arrest. I didn't call back. They'd made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. The rehab check burned in my mind during the drive back to Stanford. It represented 2 months of careful savings money I'd earmarked for residency applications and moving expenses. But if it could save Nathan's life, if it could finally break the cycle of enabling and delusion, it would be worth more than any amount. I thought about the little boy who used to follow me around, who'd wanted to be included in everything I did. Somewhere under the addiction and entitlement, that boy might still exist. The rehab offer was my last attempt to reach him. But as I pulled into the hospital parking lot ready for another 18-hour shift, I knew the truth: I couldn't save Nathan. I could only offer him the tools to save himself. Whether he used them or threw them away like every other chance he'd been given, that was his choice to make. I'd chosen medicine, chosen struggle, chosen to build rather than destroy. Now it was his turn to choose. The question was whether 3 years of living in fantasy had left him capable of choosing reality. I'd know soon enough. Either he'd show up at Sunrise Recovery Center, or he'd disappear deeper into the hole he'd dug with my parents' money and blessing. Either way, I'd done what I could. The rest was up to him. The next morning arrived with the harsh fluorescent lighting of the county jail visiting room. I'd barely slept, but I needed to see this through. Nathan had made bail somehow, scraping together the money from sources I didn't want to know about, but instead of heading to rehab, he'd demanded another meeting. His text had been brief: "We need to talk now." I found him in the same visiting room, but his demeanor had completely changed. Gone was the broken man from yesterday. In his place sat someone radiating anger, his bloodshot eyes full of accusation. "How dare you," he started before I'd even sat down. "How dare you come here with your sanctimonious offer acting like you're better than me?" "Nathan." "No." He slammed his hand on the table, making the guard look over. "You listen to me. You think you're some kind of hero, the good daughter who made it on her own? You abandoned us, Elmira. You left me to deal with Mom and Dad alone." I kept my voice level. "I was forced out. There's a difference. You could have stayed. You could have helped me succeed, and then we'd all be better off. But no, you had to be selfish. You had to chase your stupid dream of playing doctor." "Playing doctor." I laughed incredulously. "Nathan, I'm 3 months from graduating medical school. I've published research that could help save children's lives. What exactly am I playing at?" He leaned forward, his face twisted with rage. "You're playing at being important, acting like your little degree means something. You know what matters: art, music, creating something that touches people's souls. And what souls have you touched with Mom and Dad's money? See," he jabbed a finger at me, "that right there, that judgment. You've always thought you were better than me, smarter, more deserving." "I never thought that," I said quietly. "Not until you proved it true." The words hung between us like a challenge. Nathan's face flushed deeper red. "You want to know where the money went?" he asked, his voice rising. "You really want to know? Fine. Yes, I spent some on drugs. Yes, I gambled. Yes, I made mistakes. But that's what artists do. We live on the edge. We experience life fully. You experience mom and dad's savings account fully, I corrected. They gave it freely, and they gave it blindly, and you took advantage of that blindness. He stood abruptly pacing the small room like a caged animal. The guard tensed, but didn't intervene. You know what your problem is, Nathan said, whirling to face me. You have no soul, no passion. You're just a robot in a white coat cutting people open and thinking that makes you special. I don't cut people open, I said calmly. I'm specializing in pediatric oncology. I help children with cancer. Oh, how noble, he sneered. Saint Elmira, savior of sick kids. Tell me, does it make you feel good, knowing you're so much better than your failure of a brother? You're not a failure, I said. You're an addict who won't admit he needs help. I don't need help! The shout echoed off the concrete walls. I need my family to believe in me. I need support, not judgment. You need rehab, I interrupted. You need to tell our parents the truth. You need to take responsibility for once in your life. He laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. Take responsibility like you did running away the first chance you got. I didn't run, I was pushed. Same result. You left me alone with them. Do you know what that was like? The pressure. Every day they'd ask about my progress. Every week they'd want to see results. Every month they'd invest more expecting returns that never came. For the first time, I heard something real in his voice, not self-pity, but genuine pain. So you turned to drugs, I said softly. I turned to anything that made the pressure stop, he admitted, sinking back into his chair. At first, it was just to enhance creativity, then to deal with the stress, then to forget the mounting failures, then just to get through the day. Nathan, that's exactly why you need rehab. His walls slammed back up. I don't need strangers telling me how to live my life. What life? I asked. The one where you're arrested for DUI, where you're stealing from our parents, where you're destroying yourself chasing a dream that died years ago. It's not dead. He was on his feet again. I have talent, real talent, just because you can't see it. Show me, I challenged. Show me one piece of music you've created sober in the last year. One performance that wasn't bought with mom and dad's money. One person in the industry who believes in you based on merit, not payment. His face crumpled. You don't understand. The industry is corrupt. It's all about who you know, who you pay. Then why are you trying to make it there? Because it's all I have. The words tore out of him. Don't you get it? I'm not smart like you. I can't just decide to be a doctor. Music is literally the only thing I'm good at. You don't know that, I said. You've never tried anything else. Mom and Dad convinced you from childhood that you were destined for musical greatness, and you've never questioned it. Maybe you're good at other things. Maybe you could be a music teacher or a sound engineer or... Stop. He covered his ears like a child. Stop trying to make me ordinary. There's nothing wrong with ordinary, I said. Most of us are ordinary people doing our best. The problem comes when you think you're too special for ordinary life. Easy for you to say. You're about to be a doctor. That's hardly ordinary. It's the result of ordinary daily choices, I said. Studying instead of partying. Working instead of waiting for inspiration. Building something real instead of chasing fantasies. Get out, he said suddenly, his voice flat. Nathan. Get out. He was screaming now, his face contorted with rage. Take your rehab check and your judgment and your perfect life and get out. I don't need you. I don't need anyone. When I make it, and I will make it, don't you dare come crawling back. The guard was already moving toward us. I stood gathering my things. The offer stands, I said quietly. When you're ready to get help, call me. I'll die before I take your charity, he snarled. That's what I'm afraid of, I said and left. The guard escorted me out, his expression sympathetic. Family, he asked. Brother, I confirmed. He nodded knowingly. Addiction's rough on everyone. You did the right thing offering help. Can't make them take it, though. As I walked to my car, my phone rang. My mother. "What did you say to him?" she demanded without preamble. "Hello to you too, Mom." "Don't be flippant. Nathan called me in tears. He says you were cruel, judgmental. How could you kick him when he's down?" I stopped walking, taking a deep breath. "I offered to pay for rehab. How is that cruel?" "Rehab." She sounded aghast. "He doesn't need rehab. He needs support. He needs his family to believe in him. He needs professional help for his addiction. He's not an addict. He's an artist under pressure. You wouldn't understand." "Mom, he was arrested for DUI. This isn't his first arrest. You've been covering for him, haven't you? Paying off his debts, hiding his problems, enabling his destruction." "We've been supporting our son," she said icily, "something you apparently aren't capable of. Supporting him would mean getting him help, not funding his spiral into addiction." "How dare you?" "How much money is left?" I interrupted. "Of the mortgage you took out, how much is left?" Silence. "Mom, that's none of your concern. You're about to lose the house, aren't you? Nathan's music will take off soon. He just needs a little more time." "He needs rehab," I repeated, "and you need to stop enabling him." "Enabling? Is that what you call parental love now?" "I call it what it is. You're so invested in his success that you can't see what's really happening. He's sick, Mom. He needs help." "The only help he needs is for his sister to stop undermining him," she snapped. "We should have known you'd be jealous of his talent." I laughed, but it came out bitter. Jealous. Of what? His arrests, his addiction, his complete failure to produce anything of value with the fortune you've thrown at him. "This conversation is over," she said. "Don't contact us again unless you're ready to apologize and support your brother properly." Properly. I was almost shouting now, months of frustration boiling over. "You mean like you supported me by stealing my future, by choosing him over me, by throwing me out when I wouldn't sacrifice my dreams for his—" "You made your choice." "No, Mom, you made it for me. And now you're living with the consequences. Your son is an addict, your house is in foreclosure, and the daughter you threw away is about to graduate from medical school without you. How's that choice working out?" She hung up. I stood in the parking lot shaking with anger and grief. 3 years of silence and nothing had changed. They still saw me as the selfish one, the abandoner, the unsupportive sister. Nathan's narrative had become their truth, and no amount of evidence would shake it. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "How did it go?" I typed back, "He screamed at me and refused help. My mother called me jealous and unsupportive, so about as expected." Her response was immediate. "I'm sorry, you tried. That's all you could do." But as I drove back to Stanford, I wondered if trying was enough. Nathan was spiraling toward destruction, taking our parents with him. I'd offered a lifeline, but you can't save someone who's determined to drown. The rehab check sat in my wallet, unused. I'd keep it for a while, just in case. But I knew deep down that Nathan would never cash it. He'd rather hit rock bottom than admit he needed help, especially from the sister who'd succeeded where he'd failed. The saddest part was that I'd meant what I said, he probably was good at other things. But he'd never find out, trapped in the identity our parents had built for him, unable to imagine himself as anything other than a future star. I thought about the children I'd worked with during my oncology rotation, kids fighting for their lives with more grace and determination than Nathan had ever shown. They were the ones who deserved my energy, my skills, my dedication. Not a brother who saw my success as a personal attack and my offer of help as an insult. The confrontation had clarified everything. Nathan didn't want to be saved. He wanted to be enabled. And our parents were more than willing to oblige right up until the moment they lost everything. I couldn't watch anymore. I'd made my offer, extended my hand. It had been slapped away with prejudice. Now all I could do was focus on my own path and try to make peace with the fact that sometimes love means letting people face the consequences of their choices, even when those consequences are devastating. 6 months after the jail confrontation, my phone rang during rounds at the children's hospital. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. Almira. My father's voice sounded broken, aged a decade in the months since we'd last spoken. We need to talk. I stepped out of the patient room, nodding to my attending. I'll take this outside. 5 minutes. The California sunshine felt incongruous with the darkness in his voice. What's wrong? The bank is foreclosing. We have 30 days to vacate. Your mother is... She's not handling it well. I leaned against the hospital wall, feeling no satisfaction in being right. I'm sorry to hear that. Nathan's gone. He continued, the words tumbling out. He disappeared 2 weeks ago. We found out he's been stealing from us. Checks, credit cards, your mother's jewelry. It's all gone. Have you called the police? We can't, he said bitterly. He's our son. He's an addict who robbed you, I corrected. Being your son doesn't make him above the law. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're still protecting him even now, even after he's destroyed everything. There was a long pause. I could hear my mother crying in the background, a broken sound that might have moved me once. We gave him everything, my father said finally. Everything we had. Including my future, I couldn't help adding. That was different. We thought, you thought wrong, and now you're paying for it. Almira, we're going to be homeless. The words came out strangled. Your mother and I, we have nothing left. No savings, no equity, no retirement, nothing. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. They'd thrown me out with nothing but $20 and a sneer. Now they were facing the same fate they'd condemned me to. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. Just help, anything. A loan, a place to stay, anything. When I needed help, when I begged you not to take my college fund, what did you say? Silence. You said family makes sacrifices. You said Nathan's dreams were more important than mine. You said if I couldn't support that, I should leave. We were wrong, he admitted, the words dragged out of him. We were so wrong. Where's Nathan now? Los Angeles, we think. Someone saw him at a bar last week. He looked... His voice broke. He looked like a homeless person, thin, dirty, talking to himself. He needs rehab, I said for what felt like the 100th time. He needs to stop existing. My mother's voice suddenly cut in sharp with bitterness. She'd taken the phone. He's destroyed us, Almira. Your precious brother has destroyed everything. He's not my precious anything, I said. He's your precious son who you enabled into addiction. Don't you dare. I offered him rehab. I offered to pay for treatment. He refused, and you supported that refusal. Every step of the way, you chose his fantasy over reality, and this is where it led. We're going to be living in our car, she said, her voice breaking. Is that what you want to hear? That you were right? Fine, you were right. Are you happy now? No, I said honestly. I'm not happy. I'm heartbroken that it came to this, but I'm not responsible for fixing it either. You're our daughter. I was your daughter when you threw me out with nothing. What am I now? Your backup plan. We made mistakes. You made choices, active, deliberate choices. For 3 years, you've told everyone who would listen that I abandoned the family, that I was selfish and unsupportive. You created a narrative where I was the villain and Nathan was the victim. Now that narrative has collapsed and suddenly you remember I exist. My attending was signaling that I needed to return. I held up one finger. I have to go, I said. I'm in the middle of rounds. Rounds. My father had taken the phone back. You're really a doctor now. 3 months from graduation, I confirmed. We didn't know. We haven't followed your progress. I know, I said simply. You were too busy following Nathan's. Will you help us? My mother asked desperately. Please. I thought about all the times I'd fantasized about this moment, the vindication of being needed by the people who'd discarded me. But standing here in my white coat, building a career on my own merit, I felt only sadness. "I'll think about it," I said. "But right now I have children to help, real children with real problems that can actually be solved." I hung up before they could respond and returned to rounds, but focus was impossible. Between patients, I texted Sarah the basics. Her response was swift. "Holy crap, what are you going to do?" I didn't know. Part of me wanted to let them experience exactly what they'd put me through. Another part, the part that had taken an oath to do no harm, couldn't stand the thought of my parents literally homeless. That evening, I sat in my apartment, a nice one-bedroom now earned through my work with Dr. Morrison, and researched homeless shelters and social services in Indianapolis. I compiled a list of resources, food banks, emergency housing job training programs for seniors. It was clinical, practical help, not the rescue they wanted, but maybe what they needed. I also looked up Nathan. His social media had gone dark months ago, but some digging revealed the truth. He'd been arrested twice more in Los Angeles. Public intoxication, petty theft. The mugshots showed a ghost of my brother, hollow cheeks, vacant eyes, the look of someone who'd hit bottom and kept digging. My phone rang again. Unknown number, Los Angeles area code. "Elmira." Nathan's voice was barely a whisper. "Please don't hang up." "Where are you?" "I don't know, someplace. I'm so tired." "Are you safe?" A laugh that sounded like crying. "I don't know what that means anymore." "Nathan, you need help, real help." "I know," he said, and for the first time he sounded like he meant it. I screwed up everything. Mom and Dad, their house, my life, everything. "The rehab offer still stands," I said quietly. "I can't. I stole from them Elmira. I took Mom's wedding ring and pawned it. What kind of person does that?" "A sick person, an addicted person, but still a person who can get better if they try." "They hate me," he whispered. "They finally see what you saw all along, that I'm nothing, talentless, worthless." "You're not worthless, you're sick. There's a difference." "I used to be their golden child," he said, and now he was definitely crying. "They gave me everything, their money, their faith, their love, and I turned it all to ash." "Addiction does that," I said. "It takes everything good and poisons it. But Nathan, you're still alive. That means there's still hope." "I'm scared," he admitted. "I'm so scared of getting clean. What if I'm nobody without the drugs? What if they were right and I really am just mediocre?" "Then you'll be mediocre and alive," I said, which beats being high and dying. He was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, "Mom told you about the house." Dad called. "They have 30 days. Because of me. Because of choices everyone made. You're not solely responsible, Nathan. They chose to enable you. You chose to accept it. Everyone played a part." "You didn't. You got out." "I was forced out. Important distinction." "Best thing that ever happened to you," he said bitterly. "Getting away from us." I couldn't argue with that. My exile had been my salvation. "Will you help them?" he asked. "Even after everything aboard?" "I'm thinking about it." "You should," he said. "You're better than all of us. You always were." "I'm not better. I just made different choices." "I love you," he said suddenly. "I know I've been terrible. I know I blamed you for everything. But I love you. I wanted you to know that in case. "Nathan, where exactly are you?" But the line had already gone dead. I sat in my comfortable apartment surrounded by evidence of the life I'd built, medical textbooks framed, degrees, photos with classmates who'd become my chosen family. In 30 days, my parents would be where I'd started homeless, desperate, with nothing but the consequences of their choices. The difference was I'd been 22 with my whole future ahead of me. They were in their 60s with no skills, no savings, and no son to show for their investment. I pulled out my laptop and began typing. Not a check they'd proven they couldn't be trusted with money, but a plan. resources for emergency housing, information about senior services, job training programs, food banks, free legal aid for dealing with the foreclosure. It wasn't rescue. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the kind of help you'd offer strangers in need, practical, limited, boundaried. Because that's what we'd become. Strangers tied by blood but severed by choices. I'd send it tomorrow along with one condition: they had to file charges against Nathan for the theft. Not out of cruelty, but because it might be the only way to force him into court-mandated treatment. They'd hate me for it. They'd call me heartless, unsupportive, cruel. But maybe it would save both their lives and his. I thought about Nathan's words, in case. In case of what? In case he didn't make it. In case the next high was the last. In case the golden child they'd created finally finished destroying himself with the tools they'd given him. I picked up my phone and called the Los Angeles Police Department. Maybe they could trace the call, do a welfare check. It was all I could do from here. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal and the abandonment and the years of being painted as the villain in their tragedy, I didn't want my brother to die. I just wanted him to finally choose to live. The collapse had begun. Where it would end in redemption or complete destruction remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: I wouldn't be caught in the rubble. I'd built my life on stronger foundations than fantasy and favoritism, and while their house of cards fell apart, my carefully constructed future stood firm. It had to. I had children to save, a career to build, a life to live. The family that had thrown me away was discovering what they'd lost, but I was too busy becoming who I was meant to be to look back now. Graduation day arrived with the kind of California sunshine that made everything look like a movie scene. I stood in my cap and gown, surrounded by my classmates at Stanford Medical School, feeling the weight of 8 years lifting from my shoulders. 8 years since that night, my parents gave me an ultimatum: 4 years of undergraduate struggle, 4 years of medical school excellence. I'd done it. Almira Chen, the dean, called, and I walked across the stage to receive my diploma. The audience erupted in applause. My chosen family cheering loudest. Sarah had flown in from Indianapolis. Dr. Patricia Chen sat in the faculty section beaming with pride, and Dr. Morrison had postponed a conference to attend. As I shook the dean's hand, he leaned in. "Congratulations on the Johns Hopkins match, Dr. Almira. They're lucky to have you." The residency match at Johns Hopkins had been the cherry on top of an already sweet victory. The best pediatric oncology program in the country had chosen me not because of family connections or financial contributions, but because of my research, my recommendations, and my relentless drive to help children fight cancer. I returned to my seat, clutching the diploma that represented everything my parents said I'd never achieve. Around me, classmates were pointing out their families in the crowd, waving at proud parents and siblings. I focused on Sarah's face, on Dr. Chen's approving nod, on the family I'd built through merit rather than blood. The ceremony concluded with the usual pomp and circumstance, and we spilled out onto the lawn for photos and celebrations. I was posing with my research team when a commotion near the parking lot caught my attention. My parents stood at the edge of the celebration, looking wildly out of place. They'd aged a decade in the 2 years since their house was foreclosed. My father's suit was the same one he'd worn to Nathan's high school graduation, now ill-fitting and worn. My mother clutched a knockoff designer purse like armor, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. They'd found me somehow. Of course they had. "I'll be right back," I told my friends, squaring my shoulders as I walked toward the people who'd given me life and then tried to destroy it. "You shouldn't be here," I said when I reached them. My mother's face crumpled. "We just wanted to see you graduate. Our daughter, the doctor." "Now I'm your daughter." The words came out sharper than intended. For 4 years, I didn't exist. Now that I've succeeded despite you, suddenly you remember I'm your daughter. "We made mistakes," my father started. "Please," I interrupted. "Not today. This is my day. The day I earned without your help, without your support, without your belief. You don't get to claim any part of it." "We're not trying to claim anything." my mother said, tears streaming down her face. We needed to see it for ourselves, to know that something good came from all the pain. I studied them, these strangers who'd raised me. They looked smaller, somehow diminished by the weight of their choices and consequences. Living in a small apartment, now working minimum wage jobs in their 60s, abandoned by the son they'd bet everything on. They were walking cautionary tales. "How's Nathan?" I asked, not because I wanted to know, but because the question hung between us like a ghost. "In prison," my father said quietly. "Fraud charges. He was running a scam promising music lessons he never delivered, taking money from parents who wanted their kids to be stars." The irony was so thick I could choke on it. "How long?" 3 to 5 years. He refused the plea deal that included rehab. "Of course he did." "He still blames you," my mother added, as if this might hurt me. "Says if you'd helped him, none of this would have happened." "And you," I asked, "who do you blame?" They exchanged glances, years of shared delusion cracking under the weight of reality. "Ourselves," my father admitted. "We destroyed our family for a fantasy. We threw away our daughter for a dream that never existed." "We were so sure," my mother whispered, "so certain Nathan would make us proud." "And I didn't." "You did," she said. "God, you did. But we couldn't see it. We were so blinded by what we wanted Nathan to be that we couldn't see what you already were." A security guard approached, probably alerted by someone who'd noticed the tension. "Everything okay here, Dr. Almira?" The title rolled off his tongue naturally, and I saw my parents flinch at the evidence of who I'd become. "Yes," I said. "They were just leaving." "Wait." My mother reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "We know we have no right to be here. We know we destroyed any chance of being part of your life, but we wanted you to have this." I took the envelope reluctantly. Inside was a single photo, me at age 5, wearing a toy stethoscope and examining a teddy bear. On the back in my mother's handwriting, "You always knew who you were meant to be. We're sorry we tried to change that." "We follow your work now," my father said quietly. "The research you've published, the children you've helped. Dr. Morrison mentions you in every interview as his most promising protege." "You could have followed it from the beginning," I said, handing back the photo. "You could have been part of it. You chose not to." "Keep it," my mother pleaded. "Please, it's all we have to offer." "You had so much more to offer," I said sadly. "Love, support, belief, but you gave it all to the wrong place." Sarah appeared at my elbow, protective and worried. "Everything okay?" "My parents were just leaving," I said, grateful for her presence. "Sarah." My mother recognized her immediately. "Thank you for being there when we weren't." Sarah's expression could have frozen fire. Someone had to be. The awkward silence stretched until my father cleared his throat. "We'll go. We needed to see you, to see that something good survived our mistakes." They turned to leave, but my mother looked back one last time. "The news will probably cover this, your graduation and the Johns Hopkins position. If they interview you, will you mention us?" The question was so absurd, I almost laughed. After everything, she was still concerned with appearances, with what people would think. "No," I said simply. "My story is about overcoming obstacles, not about the people who created them." They left then, 2 broken people shuffling away from the celebration of everything they'd tried to prevent. I watched them go, waiting for some feeling of satisfaction or closure. Instead, I felt only emptiness where they used to be. "You okay?" Sarah asked, linking her arm through mine. "I will be," I said and meant it. "Let's get back to the party. My real family is waiting." The rest of the day passed in a blur of joy and accomplishment. Dr. Morrison gave a toast at the dinner, praising my contributions to pediatric oncology research. Dr. Chen presented me with a first-edition medical textbook inscribed with words that meant more than any parental approval, to Almira, who proves that excellence is built, not born. That night, as I packed my apartment for the move to Baltimore and Johns Hopkins, I found myself thinking about the photo my parents had tried to give me. 5-year-old me with a toy stethoscope already knowing my path. They were right about one thing I'd always known who I was meant to be. The difference was I'd had the courage to become her, even when it meant standing alone. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Local coverage of Stanford's graduation featuring profiles of notable students. There I was photographed with Dr. Morrison, the headline reading, "From Homeless to Hopkins Medical Students' Inspiring Journey." The article mentioned my research, my upcoming residency, my plans to specialize in pediatric oncology. It talked about overcoming significant family challenges and financial hardship. It painted a picture of triumph over adversity of dreams, achieved through determination. Nowhere did it mention the parents who'd thrown me out or the brother in prison or the family that had chosen favorites and lost everything. My story stood on its own merits just like I did. I closed the article and returned to packing, folding my white coat carefully between layers of tissue paper. Tomorrow I'd fly to Baltimore to find an apartment. Next month I'd start my residency at the best pediatric oncology program in the country. In 7 years I'd be a fully trained specialist, ready to save lives and advance cancer treatment for children. None of it would have happened if my parents had gotten their way. Their cruelty had become my catalyst, their abandonment, my advantage. Every obstacle they'd thrown in my path had only made me stronger, more determined, more capable of standing on my own. The achievement wasn't just the degree or the residency or the research. It was the proof that I'd been right to choose myself when no one else would. It was the validation that dreams backed by hard work beat dreams, backed by delusion every time. As I sealed the last box, my phone rang, an unknown number from the California Department of Corrections. Nathan. I let it go to voicemail. Today was about my future, not his past. He'd made his choices just like our parents had made theirs, and I'd made mine. The difference was I'd chosen to build rather than destroy to work, rather than wish to stand alone rather than fall together. And look where it had gotten me. Dr. Elmira pediatric oncology researcher Johns Hopkins, resident survivor of a family that had tried to break me and failed. The voicemail notification popped up. I deleted it without listening. Some bridges once burned light the way forward. My family had set fire to ours, but I'd used the light to find my path. And what a beautiful path it had turned out to be. 5 years had passed since my graduation when the call came. I was in the middle of teaching a group of medical students about new immunotherapy protocols when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Something made me step out and answer. "Is this Dr. Elmira?" The voice was professional, detached. "Yes, this is she. This is Officer Martinez with Indianapolis Metro Police. I'm calling because your parents listed you as their emergency contact. They're currently living in their vehicle in Riverside Park. We need someone to come get them or they'll be taken to the shelter system." I gripped the phone tighter. "Living in their vehicle?" "Yes, ma'am. They were found this morning. The temperature dropped below freezing last night. They're being treated for mild hypothermia at Methodist Hospital." I closed my eyes, leaning against the hospital corridor wall. 5 years of silence, and this was how it broke with my parents literally freezing in their car. "I'm in Baltimore," I said. "I can't—" "We understand. Should we proceed with standard protocol, social services will place them in emergency housing." "Wait," I heard myself say. "Give me a few hours. I'll make some calls." After hanging up, I stood in the hallway watching the controlled chaos of hospital life flow around me. I'd built something beautiful here. A career saving children's lives, research that was changing how we treated pediatric cancers, respect earned through merit alone. Now my past was calling demanding attention I wasn't sure I had to give. I called Sarah first. She answered on the second ring. "They're homeless," I said without preamble. "Living in their car, the police just called." "Jesus," she breathed. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. They made their choices." "They're still your parents, Elmira, and it's winter." I wanted to argue to point out that they'd had no problem throwing me out into uncertainty, but I was tired of carrying that anger. It had served its purpose, fueling my drive to succeed. Now it just felt heavy. "Can you check on them?" I asked. "I'll wire money for a hotel room, just for a few nights while I figure this out." "Of course," Sarah said immediately. "But Elmira temporary fixes won't solve this. They're in their 70s now. What's the long-term plan?" I didn't have one. For 5 years, I'd successfully compartmentalized my family, focusing on my career and chosen relationships. Now reality was demanding integration I wasn't prepared for. After arranging the hotel and asking Sarah to check on them, I tried to return to teaching. But my mind kept wandering to that image, my parents huddled in a car, choosing freezing over shelter, too proud even now to accept help from strangers. That evening, I sat in my office surrounded by achievements they'd never acknowledged. My diploma board certifications, published research papers, photos with young patients who'd beaten cancer because of treatments I'd helped develop. The life I'd built without them was full, meaningful, complete. So why did their suffering still tug at something deep inside me? My phone rang. Sarah. "They're at the hotel," she reported. "Elmira, they look awful. Your dad can barely walk. I think he injured his back doing day labor. Your mom," she paused. "She kept apologizing to me, over and over. Said she was sorry for not protecting you, for choosing wrong." "Did they ask about me?" "No, but your mom had newspaper clippings in her purse. Articles about your research, your patients, water-damaged and worn like she'd read them 1,000 times. I stared at the wall, processing this information. They'd been following my career while living in their car. Pride and regret tangled together in ways too complex to unravel. "There's more," Sarah continued. "Nathan's getting out next month. Early release for good behavior. Your parents are terrified he'll find them. Terrified of their golden child. He apparently wrote them letters from prison, blaming them for his situation, making threats. They're scared Elmira. Really scared." The irony was sharp enough to cut. They'd created a monster with their enabling, and now that monster was turning on them. The child they'd sacrificed everything for had become their nightmare, while the child they'd thrown away was their only hope. Over the next few days, I made arrangements from a distance. A small apartment in a senior living community with sliding scale rent, basic furniture from secondhand stores, connection with social services for food assistance and medical care. I did it all through intermediaries maintaining the boundary between us. But the calls kept coming, from social workers, from Sarah, from the senior center coordinator. "Your parents need this form signed. Your mother's medication isn't covered. Your father needs physical therapy. Death by 1,000 paperwork cuts, each one requiring my attention and implicitly my forgiveness." Then came the call I'd been dreading. Nathan. "Hello, sister." His voice was different, rougher, harder, with an edge that made my skin crawl. "How did you get this number?" "Mom had it written down. In case of emergencies," she said. "Well, this is an emergency. I need money." "No." "You haven't even heard—" "The answer is no, Nathan. It will always be no." "You're helping them," he accused. "Sarah told me. Setting them up in some old folks' home. Where's my help?" "You had hundreds of thousands of dollars in help. You turned it into addiction and crime. That's in the past. I'm clean now. I deserve a second chance." "You've had dozens of second chances. This is consequence, not punishment." His voice turned ugly. "You think you're so much better than me? Dr. Elmira saving kids writing papers. You're nothing but a selfish bitch who abandoned her family. I was thrown out for refusing to fund your delusions. And now you get to play hero swooping in to save mom and dad after letting them rot for 5 years. I'm ensuring they have basic necessities. That's not heroism, it's human decency. What about my basic necessities? Get a job, get real help, build a life based on reality instead of fantasy. I'm an artist. You're an ex-convict with a fraud conviction. Adjust your expectations accordingly." He hung up with a string of profanities that would have made our mother faint. But within minutes, my phone was ringing again. This time, my mother. "Elmira." Her voice was thin, frightened. "Nathan was just here. He's angry about the apartment. Says we're choosing you over him again. Are you safe? I don't know. He looked different. Prison changed him. Harder, meaner. Call the police if he comes back. I can't call the police on my son. The same son who stole your wedding ring, who forged checks in your name, who put you on the street with his choices. He's still my child. So am I said quietly. But that didn't stop you from throwing me away when it was convenient. Silence stretched between us, years of unspoken truths filling the void. I know, she finally whispered. I know what we did. I live with it every day. When I see what you've become, what you've achieved, I know we chose wrong. We backed the wrong child, believed the wrong dreams. It wasn't about backing the right child, I said. It was about supporting both your children. It was about not making everything a competition where one had to lose for the other to win. I see that now, but it's too late. For us, yes, but not for you. You can still choose to protect yourself from Nathan. You can still choose reality over fantasy. He's all we have left, she said, and the defeat in her voice was absolute. No, I corrected. He's all you're choosing. I've provided housing, healthcare, access, basic stability. But I can't make you accept that Nathan is dangerous. I can't force you to see what he's become. After we hung up, I sat in my Baltimore apartment looking out at the harbor lights. Somewhere in Indianapolis, my parents were cowering in a subsidized apartment, afraid of the son they'd created. Nathan was out there too angry and entitled, looking for someone to blame for the life his choices had built. And here I was, successful beyond anything they'd imagined, but still tethered to their tragedy by bonds I couldn't quite sever. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Your dad's in the ER. Nathan showed up drunk. There was a fight. Your mom's hysterical. I stared at the message, feeling the weight of inevitable tragedy. They'd enabled Nathan into monstrosity, and now that monster was devouring them. The golden child they'd bet everything on had become their destruction, while the daughter they'd discarded was their only lifeline. But even now, even with evidence of what Nathan had become, they couldn't let go of the fantasy. He was still their baby boy, still the chosen one, still worth protecting, even as he destroyed them. I booked a flight to Indianapolis. Not to save them, I'd learned that was impossible, but to bear witness to the final act of a tragedy that had been 5 years in the making. The downfall was complete. The only question now was who would be left standing when the dust settled. 2 years after that terrible night when Nathan had attacked our father, I stood on a stage in New York, looking out at an audience of 500 medical professionals. The lights were bright, the microphone steady in my hand, and my presentation on innovative pediatric cancer treatments had just received a standing ovation. Thank you, I said, waiting for the applause to die down. But before I leave this stage, I want to talk about something beyond medical procedures and research data. I want to talk about resilience. The audience settled, sensing a shift in tone. 7 years ago, I was homeless. I continued. Not by circumstance, but by choice, my family's choice to value one child's dreams over another's proven potential. They invested everything in my brother's music career, taking my college fund, mortgaging their house, believing that artistic dreams mattered more than medical aspirations. A hush fell over the room. This wasn't the usual medical conference fare. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, I said. I'm telling you because in this room are young doctors who might be facing their own obstacles, financial hardship, family rejection, systemic barriers. I'm proof that those obstacles can become stepping stones. I clicked to my final slide, a photo of me with my latest patient, a 6-year-old who'd beaten leukemia using protocols I'd helped develop. Today, my research has contributed to treatments that have saved dozens of children. My family's rejection became my motivation. Their disbelief became my fuel. Sometimes the greatest gift people can give you is showing you exactly who they are, so you can choose to become someone different. The applause this time was different, deeper, more personal. As I left the stage, Dr. Morrison met me in the wings. That was brave, he said. Your story needs a bigger platform. What do you mean? He handed me a business card. A publisher friend. She specializes in medical memoirs. Think about it. That evening in my hotel room overlooking Central Park, I video called Sarah. "You actually told them," she asked, eyes wide, "the whole story." An abbreviated version, I admitted. But yes, it felt necessary. "How do you feel free?" I said, surprising myself with the truth. For years, I've hidden the family stuff, pretended I emerged fully formed as a doctor. But that struggle is part of my story. Maybe it can help someone else. Speaking of family, Sarah's expression grew careful. "Have you heard about Nathan?" My stomach tightened. No. After he violated the restraining order last year, I've had no contact. He's in Los Angeles again, clean apparently, working at a music therapy center for kids with disabilities. I stared at her. "What?" I know. I didn't believe it either. But my cousin lives out there, saw him at a farmer's market. He's been sober 18 months, has a steady job, even volunteers at the addiction center where he got clean. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because your mom wrote to me. She wanted me to pass along a letter from Nathan. I didn't open it, but—" "Burn it," I said immediately. "Almira." "No, I've built something beautiful without them. I won't let them destabilize it now." But after we hung up, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Nathan actually clean, actually working, actually helping others instead of destroying everyone around him. It seemed impossible, but addiction recovery was part of my medical training. I knew miracles happened even to the undeserving. My phone rang, the publisher Dr. Morrison had mentioned. "Dr. Almira, I'm Rebecca Chen from Meridian Publishing. Dr. Morrison shared your conference speech. I think your story could help thousands of young people facing similar family challenges. Would you consider writing a memoir?" I looked out at the city lights, thinking about all the stories hidden behind those windows. Stories of rejection and resilience, of families that hurt instead of healed, of success built on the ashes of abandonment. "Yes," I said, "I think I would." The next 6 months were a blur of writing, editing, and reliving memories I'd tried to bury. Late nights at my computer, tears over chapters about the ultimatum anger when describing Nathan's manipulations, and unexpected grief for the family we could have been. The title came to me during a particularly difficult night, When Love Means Letting Go, a doctor's journey from abandonment to achievement. My editor pushed for more details about my current relationship with my family. "Readers will want to know," she insisted. "Have you forgiven them? Do you see them? What happened to Nathan?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I've maintained boundaries for my own survival." "But you pay for their housing, ensure they have medical care. That's not nothing." "It's human decency," I said, "not forgiveness." "Maybe that's enough," she suggested. "Maybe that's the lesson, that you can ensure people's basic needs without sacrificing your own well-being to their dysfunction." As the book neared publication, I established a scholarship fund for medical students from troubled families. The irony wasn't lost on me, using money earned from our family tragedy to help others escape their own. Then came the letter I couldn't ignore. Not from Nathan, but from the addiction treatment center where he worked. Professional, letterhead, formal tone. "Dr. Almira," it read, "I'm writing regarding your brother Nathan, who has been our music therapy coordinator for the past year. He's requested permission to share his story at our annual fundraising gala, specifically how family enabling led to his addiction and eventual recovery. However, his story necessarily involves yours. We wanted your consent before approving his participation." Attached was a transcript of what Nathan planned to say. I read it 3 times, each time finding fewer lies and more truth than I'd expected. "My family gave me everything except boundaries." His speech began. "They sacrificed my sister's dreams for my delusions, teaching me that I mattered more than others. That entitlement became addiction. That addiction became crime. Only when I lost everything, family, freedom, future, did I find the clarity to rebuild." He went on to describe prison as his wake-up call the moment he realized the music career was never real, just an excuse to avoid adult responsibility. He talked about our parents losing their home, about attacking our father, about the restraining order I'd filed. My sister became a doctor despite our family not because of it. He'd written. She saved lives while I destroyed them. Her success is proof that enabling isn't love, it's slow poison. Real love sets boundaries. Real love demands accountability. Real love sometimes means letting people face consequences. I set down the transcript, hands shaking. This was Nathan taking responsibility, actually owning his choices and their impact. It was what I'd begged him to do years ago when there was still time to save our parents' home, our relationship, some semblance of family. I picked up my phone and dialed the treatment center. This is Dr. Almira. Regarding Nathan's speech, he has my permission. Thank you, the director said. Would you consider attending? Your presence would mean a great deal to our clients, showing that family members can succeed despite addiction's chaos. I'll think about it, I said and meant it. That night, I worked on the final chapter of my memoir. Originally, it had ended with my success, my career, my chosen family. But now I added an epilogue. Forgiveness isn't always reconciliation. Sometimes it's simply releasing the anger that poisons your own growth. My brother found recovery not through family enabling, but through its absence. My parents found stability not through their golden child, but through the daughter they'd discarded. And I found success not through their support, but through surviving its withdrawal. I don't know if we'll ever be a family again. The wounds run deep, carved by choices that can't be undone. But I've learned that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, that sacrifice doesn't always equal love, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to fail without taking you down with them. To every young person reading this who's been told their dreams matter less than family dysfunction, you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You are not selfish for choosing your future over their fantasy. You are not wrong for building boundaries where they built chaos. Your dreams matter. Your future matters. You matter. Choose accordingly. I closed my laptop feeling a weight lift that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Tomorrow I'd return to Baltimore to my patients and research and carefully constructed life. But tonight, I'd written the truth that might help someone else escape their own family tragedy. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Dr. Almira, this is Nathan. The treatment center said you approved my speech. Thank you. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know I'm grateful. Not for money or support, but for refusing to enable me. Your boundaries saved my life. I hope someday I can earn the chance to apologize in person. Until then, know that every kid I help through music therapy is a small payment on an unpayable debt. Your brother, if I can still call myself that, Nathan. I read it twice, then deleted it. Some bridges were too burned to rebuild. But maybe, just maybe, their ashes could fertilize something new. Not a relationship, but an understanding. Not forgiveness, but forward movement. The opportunity my tragedy had created wasn't just my medical career or financial success. It was the chance to show others that survival was possible, that family dysfunction didn't have to be inherited, that you could honor blood ties without being strangled by them. Tomorrow, 50,000 copies of my memoir would ship to bookstores nationwide. Somewhere a young person facing their own impossible choice might read it and choose themselves. Choose their dreams, choose their future. And that possibility, that opportunity to light someone else's path through darkness, made every painful step of my journey worthwhile. 8 years after that fateful ultimatum, I stood in the rain outside a modest apartment building in Indianapolis. The senior living community looked nothing like the house my parents had lost, small, basic, but clean and safe. I'd been paying the rent for 3 years without visiting, maintaining distance, while ensuring their survival. But today was different. Today they'd asked to see me. Sarah waited in the car engine running. You sure about this? No, I admitted, pulling my coat tighter. But my book releases next week. They deserve to hear about it from me, not the media. They don't deserve anything, she said firmly. But you're a better person than they ever were. I climbed the narrow stairs to Unit 2B, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I knocked, it was my father who answered. The years had not been kind. He moved slowly, carefully, like each motion hurt. But his eyes were clear present in a way they hadn't been during Nathan's drama years. "Elmira," he said softly, "you came." The apartment was sparse but tidy. My mother sat on a worn couch, hands folded in her lap. She looked up when I entered, and I saw tears already forming. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "I'm not here for emotional reunions. We need to talk about some things." I sat across from them, maintaining distance even in proximity. On the coffee table between us, I placed a copy of my manuscript. "My memoir publishes next week," I said. "It includes our story, all of it." My mother reached for the book with trembling hands. "May I?" I nodded, watching as she read the title trace the cover with one finger. "I've changed some names, but anyone who knows our family will recognize the story. I wanted you to be prepared." "What does it say about us?" my father asked quietly. "The truth. That you gave my college fund to Nathan. That you threw me out for refusing to sacrifice my dreams. That your favoritism led to his addiction, your bankruptcy, and our estrangement." My mother flinched at each word. "We know what we did was wrong." "Do you?" I interrupted. "Do you really? Because 3 years ago you were still protecting Nathan after he attacked Dad. You were still choosing the child who destroyed you over the one trying to help." "That's not fair," my father said. "He's sick." "He was sick. Now he's sober, working, taking responsibility. Do you know what changed? He hit rock bottom without you there to cushion the fall. Your love nearly killed him." Silence filled the small room. Outside, rain drummed against windows that needed resealing. "We got your letter," my mother said finally, "about the scholarship fund. 20 students helped so far. 23. All from families who couldn't or wouldn't support their medical dreams. They'll become doctors without the trauma I endured." "That's wonderful," she said, and seemed to mean it. "We're proud." "Don't." The word came out harsher than intended. You don't get to be proud of something you tried to prevent. You don't get to claim any part of my success. "Then why are you here?" my father asked, genuine confusion in his voice. I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "Because I needed to see you, to understand if you truly grasp what happened. Not for reconciliation, but for closure." "We understand," my mother said quickly. "We chose wrong. We see that now." "No," I said. "You chose favoritism. You chose to believe that one child mattering meant the other couldn't. You chose fantasy over reality even when reality was succeeding right in front of you." "We were different people then," my father offered. "Nathan's talent seemed so special. I had a 4.0 GPA. I'd already been accepted to pre-med programs. I was working 3 jobs to contribute to my education. What about that wasn't special?" They had no answer. Of course they didn't. The truth was too ugly to voice. I hadn't been special because I was just the daughter. Nathan was the son, the baby, the one who reflected their dreams back at them. "Nathan wrote to us," my mother said suddenly. "From Los Angeles. He's doing well. Music therapy with disabled children." "I know." "He credits you, says your boundaries saved his life." "My boundaries saved my life," I corrected. His salvation was a side effect. "He wants to apologize, to make amends. He can want whatever he likes. I'm not a step in his recovery program." My father shifted painfully in his chair. The attack from Nathan had left permanent damage, another casualty of their enabling. "What do you want from us?" he asked finally. "You're paying our rent, ensuring we have food and medicine, but you won't let us back into your life. What's the point?" "The point is that I'm not you," I said simply. "I don't throw away family when they disappoint me, but I also don't sacrifice myself for their comfort. You have what you need to survive. That's more than you gave me." "We gave you life," my mother said, a flash of her old defensiveness showing. "And then tried to destroy it when it didn't match your vision," I shot back. She crumpled at that aging years in seconds. I dream about it. That night, telling you to choose between medical school and Nathan. I see your face, see you leaving, and I want to scream at myself to stop you. But you didn't, and Dad agreed, and Nathan played piano while my world burned. We thought we were doing the right thing, my father said weakly. No, you thought you were doing the easy thing, backing the child who told you what you wanted to hear instead of the one showing you what was real. I stood suddenly exhausted by this conversation that changed nothing. The book will bring media attention, I said. Reporters might contact you. I'd appreciate if you didn't speak to them, but I can't control what you do. We won't, my mother said quickly. We've done enough damage. I moved toward the door, then paused. Do you know why I really came today? They shook their heads. To see if I felt anything, if there was any piece of the family we used to be worth salvaging. I looked at them. Really looked. 2 elderly people drowning in consequences they'd created. There isn't. We're strangers who share DNA. The family I wanted, the parents I deserved, they never existed. Elmira, please. My mother stood reaching out. The rent is paid through next year. The health insurance will continue, but this is the last time we'll speak. I opened the door. I hope you find peace with your choices. I found mine without you. I left them standing there, my mother crying, my father silent, down the stairs through the rain into Sarah's waiting car. How was it? She asked as I buckled in. Final, I said. It was final. As we drove away, I didn't look back, but I did pull out my phone and scroll to Nathan's message from months ago. Still unread, still waiting. With sudden clarity, I deleted it. Then I blocked the number. Some stories didn't need epilogues, some relationships didn't deserve second chances, and some reckonings were simply about accepting that the price of peace was permanent distance. Want to get dinner? Sarah asked. Celebrate surviving. Yes, I said, feeling lighter with each mile between me and that apartment. Let's celebrate moving forward. My phone buzzed with an email from my publisher. Pre-orders were exceeding expectations. The story of a daughter discarded and a family destroyed by favoritism had struck a nerve. Messages were already coming in from readers who saw themselves in my journey. I thought about my parents alone in their subsidized apartment with their regrets, about Nathan rebuilding his life on the other side of the country, about the medical students my scholarship would help escape similar situations. 8 years ago, they'd given me an ultimatum: support your brother's future, or leave. I'd chosen to leave. Now looking at the life I'd built from nothing, the children I'd helped save, the future doctors I was empowering, I knew I'd chosen correctly. The reckoning was complete, not with fanfare or forgiveness, but with simple truth. They'd bet on the wrong child and everyone had paid the price. Everyone except me. I'd paid in advance with tears and struggle and nights spent homeless. But I'd purchased something priceless, a life built on merit, not manipulation. Success earned, not enabled. Family chosen, not endured. As Indianapolis faded behind us, I felt the last chains of obligation dissolve. They had their apartment, their safety net, their subsistence. I had my freedom, my future, my family of choice. It was more than enough. It was everything. The call came on a Tuesday morning 6 months after my final visit to my parents. I was reviewing patient charts when my assistant knocked. Dr. Elmira. There's a Dr. Patricia Reeves on line 1. Says it's about family therapy. My stomach tightened. I'd been clear: no reconciliation, no therapy, no attempts to rebuild what had never truly existed. But something made me take the call. This is Dr. Elmira. Dr. Elmira, I'm Patricia Reeves, a family therapist here in Indianapolis. I'm calling because your parents have been attending sessions for the past 5 months. They've made significant progress, but we've hit a crucial juncture. I told them no therapy. Our relationship is over. They're not in therapy to reconcile with you, Dr. Reeves said carefully. They're trying to understand how they became people who would destroy one child for another. However, something has come up that you need to know about. I set down my pen. What kind of something? Your brother Nathan is part of their sessions now via video from Los Angeles. During yesterday's session, some disturbing information came to light about ongoing manipulation. My chest tightened. What kind of manipulation? Your parents have been telling extended family members that you've been financially abusing them, that you control their housing to keep them dependent, that you refuse to let them see you unless they pay you back for your education. The words hit like physical blows, even now, even after everything they were painting me as the villain. But that's not why I'm calling, Dr. Reeves continued. I'm calling because Nathan confronted them about it. He has recordings of their conversations with relatives, proof of their lies. He wanted me to ask if you'd be willing to join one session not for reconciliation, but to address this pattern of defamation that's affecting your professional reputation. I stared at the wall, processing this reversal. Nathan defending me. Nathan gathering evidence. Nathan standing up to the parents who'd created him. When I heard myself ask, tomorrow at 2, if possible, via video conference. You wouldn't have to be in the same room. I'll think about it. Dr. Almira. For what it's worth, I've been doing this for 30 years. Your parents are exactly where they need to be in therapy. The question is whether you need to witness it for your own closure. That night, I called Sarah. Nathan's been recording our parents lying about me. Nathan, your brother Nathan, the one who blamed you for everything. Apparently, recovery changed him more than we thought. Are you going to do it? The therapy session? I looked around my apartment, my sanctuary built far from their chaos. I don't know. What's the point? They'll never really change. Maybe the point isn't them changing. Maybe it's you seeing who they really are when confronted with evidence of their lies. The next day, I sat in my office laptop open to the video conference link. My hands shook slightly as I clicked join. The screen split into quadrants, Dr. Reeves in her office, my parents in theirs, Nathan from what looked like a small apartment, and me in Baltimore. My parents gasped when my image appeared. They looked older, frailer, but also somehow clearer than before. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Almira, Dr. Reeves began. Nathan, would you share what you discovered? Nathan looked directly at the camera. He was healthy, clear-eyed, completely different from the angry addict who'd attacked our father. I've been in recovery 2 years. Part of that is making amends, but also recognizing patterns. Last month, Aunt Patricia called me upset about Almira's cruelty to you. The story she told didn't match reality, so I started investigating. He pulled up his phone. I have 17 recordings of conversations where Mom and Dad told relatives that Almira controls their finances, withholds access, demands repayment. All lies. Nathan, our mother said weakly, we never meant. Yes, you did, he interrupted. You meant to control the narrative like you always have. Make yourselves the victims, Almira the villain, just like you did when she left. Play one of the recordings, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Nathan tapped his screen. My mother's voice filled the conference. She has all this money now, but keeps us in poverty, makes us beg for groceries, says we can't see her unless we admit we were terrible parents, so cruel after everything we sacrificed for her. That's enough, I said. Dr. Reeves leaned forward. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, is that your voice? My father nodded miserably. My mother just stared at her hands. I pay your rent, health insurance, and utilities directly, I said. You have food assistance and senior services I arranged. I've never demanded repayment or meetings. The only cruelty here is your continued lies. We were hurt, my mother burst out. You cut us off. I protected myself, I corrected. There's a difference. Can we explore that? Dr. Reeves asked. This pattern of revising history to avoid accountability. What followed was 90 minutes of the most intense conversation of my life. My parents' lies unraveled one by one, exposed not by me, but by Nathan, the son they'd enabled into near destruction, who now saw clearly what I'd seen all along. You did the same thing to Almira that you did to me, Nathan said at one point. Told everyone a story that made you look good. The difference is she got out before it destroyed her. "We didn't mean to hurt anyone," my father said, tears streaming down his face. "Impact matters more than intent," Dr. Reeves noted. "Your daughter lost her family, her security, her educational funding. Your son lost his 20s to addiction. These aren't accidents, they're consequences of choices." "What do you want us to do?" my mother asked desperately. "How do we fix this?" "You can't," I said simply. "Some things can't be fixed, only acknowledged. You chose favorites. You chose lies. You chose to make me the villain rather than admit your mistakes. Those choices have consequences." "But we're in therapy," she protested. "We're trying—" "You're in therapy because you have no other options," Nathan said brutally. "Because I'm sober and won't enable you. Because Elmira succeeded despite you. Because your fantasy collapsed and left you with nothing but truth." Dr. Reeves intervened gently. "Nathan, tell Elmira what you shared in our last session." Nathan looked directly at me through the camera. "I hated you for years. Blamed you for not saving me, for abandoning us, for succeeding where I failed. But in recovery, I realized the truth. You saved yourself. And by doing that, by refusing to enable me like they did, you showed me it was possible to change." 2. He paused, visibly emotional. "I'm a music therapist now. I help kids with disabilities express themselves through sound. It's not the rock star dream, but it's real. It matters. And I wouldn't have found it if you hadn't held the boundary." "That's good," I managed, surprised by the emotion in my throat. "The kids I work with," he continued, "some come from families like ours. Families that pick favorites, create narratives, destroy themselves with lies. I tell them about you, about the sister who chose truth over comfort, who built something beautiful from nothing. You're the hero of those stories, Elmira, not the villain Mom and Dad painted." My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. "We never meant—" "Stop," Dr. Reeves said firmly. "Stop saying you never meant harm. Own the harm. That's the only path forward." "We own it," my father said quietly. "We destroyed our family. We chose wrong. We lied to ourselves and everyone else. We're sorry." "Sorry doesn't rebuild trust," I said. "Sorry doesn't erase 8 years of pain. Sorry doesn't undo the damage you're still doing by lying about me to family." "Then what does—" my mother asked. "Truth," Nathan said before I could answer. "Consistent, uncomfortable truth. Tell everyone you lied. Tell them what really happened. Stop being victims and start being accountable." "We'll call everyone," my father promised. "Today, we'll tell the truth." "And then," Dr. Reeves prompted, "and then we live with the consequences." My mother said something, finally shifting in her voice. "We live knowing we threw away a daughter who deserved better. We live with the reality that our favoritism nearly killed our son. We accept that some wounds don't heal, some bridges can't be rebuilt." "Is that enough?" Dr. Reeves asked me. "Knowing they'll correct the lies—" I thought about it, looking at these people who'd shaped my life through their failures. My parents finally facing truth. Nathan rebuilt from the ashes of their enabling, and me successful despite them all. "It's not about enough," I said finally. "It's about ending the harm. Call our relatives. Tell the truth. Stop making me the villain in your tragedy. Do that and we can coexist at a distance. Don't, and I'll consider legal action for defamation." "We'll do it," my father said immediately. "Whatever you need." The session wound down with Dr. Reeves summarizing next steps. As we prepared to disconnect, Nathan spoke once more. "Elmira, I know I have no right to ask, but would you be willing to have coffee sometime? Not as family, just as two people who survived the same war from different sides." I studied him through the screen, this stranger who used to be my brother. "Maybe," I said. "Someday, not yet." "I understand," he said. "Thank you for considering it." "Nathan," I said before he could disconnect, "the kids you're helping, that matters. Hold on to that." His smile was sad but genuine. Every day. One by one, the screens went dark until only Dr. Reeves remained. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like I witnessed a funeral for who they could have been," I said honestly, but also relief. They finally see it. The truth. Truth is a powerful thing, she agreed, especially for those who've lived in lies. After disconnecting, I sat in my office processing what had just happened. My parents would call relatives today admit their lies. Nathan was building a meaningful life from the wreckage of his entitled past. And I was still standing still. Strong, still committed to the boundaries that had saved me. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "How did it go?" "They're finally taking accountability," I typed back. "All of them." "What now?" I looked at my patient files, my research notes, my life built on truth and merit. Now I get back to work, saving lives that can actually be saved. But as I returned to my charts, I felt something I hadn't expected, a tiny seed of peace. Not forgiveness that might never come. Not reconciliation, our family was too broken for that. But acknowledgement. Finally, after 8 years, acknowledgement of the truth. It wasn't everything, but maybe it was enough to finally close this chapter and write the rest of my story free from their shadows. The test wasn't whether they could earn forgiveness. It was whether they could finally, honestly own their choices. Today, for the first time, they'd passed. 1 year after that therapy session, I stood in Grandmother Rose's house, my house now preparing for a gathering I never thought would happen. Not a reunion exactly, but something more complex, a meeting of survivors. The doorbell rang and Sarah entered carrying a homemade pie. "You sure about this?" "No," I admitted, arranging flowers in Grandmother's favorite vase. "But it feels like the right time." My parents arrived first, looking uncertain on the threshold of the house they'd once assumed would be theirs. They'd aged gracefully in the past year therapy and truth-telling softening the harsh lines that bitterness had carved. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They entered carefully, as if afraid sudden movements might shatter this fragile detente. My mother carried a small wrapped gift, my father a folder of documents. "The house looks wonderful," my mother said softly. "You've kept Grandmother's roses blooming." "She taught me well," I replied, leading them to the living room. We sat in awkward silence until the doorbell rang again. Nathan stood outside, healthier than I'd ever seen him, carrying a guitar case and radiating nervous energy. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi," I responded and let him in. The 5 of us, my parents, Nathan, Sarah, and me, sat in Grandmother's living room like survivors of a shipwreck, unsure how to navigate solid ground. "Thank you for agreeing to this," my father began. "We're not here to recreate a family," I said clearly. "We're here to acknowledge what we've each built from the wreckage." Nathan nodded. "Fair enough." He pulled out a sheet of paper. I wrote down what I wanted to say so I don't mess it up. He read about his 2 years of sobriety, his work with disabled children, the apartment he'd earned through honest work. He spoke about the 12 families he'd scammed during his addiction and how he was paying them back slowly but steadily. "I can't undo the harm," he concluded, "but I can choose to create healing instead of hurt. Every kid I help find their voice through music is a small repayment on an unpayable debt." My parents went next, my father pulling out the folder he'd brought. Inside were letters, copies of every communication they'd sent to relatives over the past year, correcting their lies about me. "We told everyone the truth," he said, "about taking your college fund, about throwing you out, about the lies we spread. Some family members haven't spoken to us since. That's fair." "We also started volunteering," my mother added, "at a shelter for homeless youth, kids whose parents threw them out for being different, for not meeting expectations. We see you in every one of them." She handed me the wrapped gift. Inside was a photo album I'd never seen pictures of me throughout childhood, at science fairs and honor ceremonies, receiving awards they'd apparently saved despite removing them from the walls. "We documented your excellence," she said, tears flowing freely. "We just couldn't see it past our own prejudice. These photos prove what we denied: you were always extraordinary. We just valued the wrong things." I flipped through the album, seeing my younger self through their lens for the first time. In every photo I stood straight, smiled, confidently, achieved consistently. The evidence of my worth had always been there. They'd just chosen not to see it. "My turn," I said, setting aside the album. "My book has helped fund scholarships for 47 medical students now. Each one comes from a family that couldn't or wouldn't support their dreams. They'll become doctors without the trauma I endured." "We bought your book," Nathan said quietly. "Both of us. It was hard to read, seeing ourselves through your eyes, but necessary." "The chapter about the ultimatum." My father's voice broke. "I've read it 20 times, each time hoping it would end differently." "But it couldn't," I said. "That's the point. Choices have consequences. We all learned that the hard way." Sarah, who'd been silent, finally spoke. "What Elmira's not telling you is that she's been named to Forbes 30 Under 30 for her cancer research, that she's saving children's lives while building programs to help others escape what she endured, that she's turned your cruelty into compassion for others." "Sarah," I warned. "No," she said firmly. "They should know. Not to give them credit, but so they understand the full weight of what they almost destroyed." An uncomfortable silence settled until Nathan picked up his guitar. Would it be okay if I played something not a performance, just something I wrote for my kids, the ones who've been thrown away? I nodded, curious despite myself. His voice when he sang was different than I remembered, humble instead of boastful, real instead of rehearsed. The song was simple, about finding your worth when others couldn't see it, about building something beautiful from broken pieces. It was, "I realized our story set to music. Not the grandiose dreams he'd once chased, but something genuine and healing." When he finished, my mother was crying again. "That's what music was supposed to be," she whispered. "Healing, connection. Not the weapon we made it into." "It can be both," Nathan said. "I used it as a weapon for years. Now I try to make it medicine." As the afternoon wore on, we found a rhythm. Not comfortable, we might never be comfortable, but functional. We shared meals, careful conversation, acknowledgments of growth and pain. No one pretended we were a normal family. We were something else, people connected by history and DNA who'd chosen different paths from the same destructive beginning. "I need to tell you something," my mother said as the day waned. "We're moving." "Moving?" "To Florida. Your father's cousin offered us work managing a small motel. Real work, honest income. A fresh start where people don't know our story." "That's good," I said, meaning it. Fresh starts can be powerful. "We wanted to see you before we left," my father added. "To thank you for the apartment, the support, the chance to rebuild when we deserved nothing." "Everyone deserves a chance to change," I said. "You just have to take it." As they prepared to leave, my mother approached hesitantly. "Elmira, I know we have no right to ask, but might we write sometimes? Not often. Just updates on our lives, our work, no expectations of response." I considered it. Letters felt safer than visits, more controlled than calls. "You can write. I make no promises about responding." "That's more than we deserve," she said. Nathan lingered after our parents left. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Do you think we'll ever be a real family again?" I looked at him, this stranger who was my brother, this recovering addict who'd found purpose in helping others. "We were never a real family, Nathan. Real families don't sacrifice one child for another. Real families don't build themselves on lies and favoritism." "Then what are we now?" "People who share history and DNA, who've each found our own way forward. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all we need to be." He nodded, understanding. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Not the success, though that's amazing, but for surviving us. For refusing to let our dysfunction define you." "We all survived," I said, "just differently." After he left, Sarah and I sat in grandmother's kitchen drinking tea from her china cups. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked. "Like I've closed a chapter without slamming the book shut," I said, They're moving on, Nathan's healing, I'm thriving. Maybe this is what resolution looks like. Not forgiveness, not reunion, but everyone finding their own path forward. Your grandmother would be proud, Sarah said, looking around the kitchen where Grandmother Rose had taught us both to bake. You honored her gift perfectly. Not just the house, but the chance to show your true character. That night, I walked through the house that had become my sanctuary. In my office hung my degrees, certifications, and awards, but also the photo from the album my parents had given me, 5-year-old me, with a toy stethoscope already knowing my path. I thought about the 47 scholarship recipients studying across the country, each escaping their own version of my story. About the children whose cancers we'd beaten with protocols I'd helped develop. About Nathan's disabled students finding their voices through music. About my parents finally working honest jobs, helping homeless youth they'd once created. From destruction, construction. From abandonment, achievement. From lies, truth. My phone buzzed with an email from my publisher. The paperback edition of my memoir was about to release with a new epilogue about choosing peace over revenge, boundaries over bitterness. I started typing. 8 years ago, my parents gave me an ultimatum: support your brother's future or move out. I chose to move out. It was the best decision I never wanted to make. Today I understand that sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes support means refusing to enable. Sometimes the greatest gift a family can give you is showing you exactly who they are, so you can choose to become someone different. To everyone reading this who faces their own impossible choice, choose yourself. Choose your dreams. Choose your future. The family that truly loves you will celebrate your success, not demand you sacrifice it. And if they don't build your own family from those who see your worth, you are not selfish for refusing to fund someone else's fantasy with your reality. You are not cruel for building boundaries where others built chaos. You are not wrong for choosing achievement over enabling. Your dreams matter. Your future matters. You matter. The rest is just noise. With love and hope for your journey, Dr. Elmira. I sent the email and closed my laptop. Tomorrow I'd return to Johns Hopkins to my patients and research. My parents would pack for Florida. Nathan would teach music to children who needed healing. And somewhere, someone facing their own family ultimatum would read my story and choose themselves. The cycle of dysfunction had ended, not with reconciliation or revenge, but with each of us choosing to build something better from the rubble of what we'd been. It wasn't the ending anyone had planned, but it was real, honest, and earned. And that made it perfect. If this story resonated with you, if you've faced your own family ultimatums or impossible choices, I want you to know you're not alone. Your dreams are valid. Your boundaries are necessary. Your future is worth fighting for. What choice are you facing today? What boundary do you need to set? What dream are you being asked to sacrifice? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if it touched your heart. Subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over family dysfunction. And please share this with someone who needs to hear that choosing themselves isn't selfish, it's survival. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, sometimes the family that throws you away is actually setting you free to become who you were always meant to be. Until next time, choose yourself. Your future is waiting.